me the cereal kids are crazy for, Cthulhu's. Start your morning madness with a bowl of morning happiness.
Cthulhu sale is ongoing now. You will take part. Save up to 33% off gem bundles. You will take part.
Crazy crispity, crazy crunchity, crazy
Select chests up to 50% off. You will take part. Boosters, avatars, wards, and more up to 50% off. You will take part. Party up with up to 3 times favor. Worshippers and XP. You will take part. This is your duty.
Crazy Cthulhu-y, Cthulhu. Surgeon General's warning, Cthulhu's are not of this world and should not be ingested by children or adults over the age of 80. Gems are not included as a prize because Cthulhu's are not real. Reality is meaningless, time is a construct. They not all hope when you ingest Cthulhu's. Use as directed, part of balanced breakfast. For the crispity, crunchity, crazy crunch, get cuckoo with Cthulhu.
You will take part.
Of a balanced breakfast.
Can we take a commercial break?
Hey there, SMITE fans, Aggro here. Look, every single year, the SPL just keeps getting better. Season 7 was incredible, and in Season 8, I'm sure our players are going to take their game to the next level. But in order to do that, they're going to need the best gear they can get their hands on. And that's why I'm so excited to announce the title sponsor for Season 8 of the SPL is Alienware. Yeah, that Alienware. Our players are getting the best of the best in computer gaming. These Alienware Aurora Ryzen Edition PC setups are insane. Not only will these be the PCs that the players will compete on once we are in studio, but Alienware is also providing one for each player at their home setup to make sure their practice is as good as possible. Now let's get down to brass tacks. The specs on these Alienware Aurora Ryzen Edition desktops are amazing. An AMD Ryzen 9 16-core processor.
That's a lot of cores.
That's plenty of processing power.
That's a lot of cores. Plenty of cores.
If you want to stream, this is the way to go.
I know a lot about my cores, so. I mean, Pilates, right?
64 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM.
What? Is that true?
That is true.
I mean, this thing has 64 gigs of DDR4 RAM.
Which you can do literally anything with.
Literally anything.
I've never had more than 16 gigs.
That's quadruple the amount I have at home.
And one of the hottest commodities in the PC world, an NVIDIA GeForce 3090 graphics card.
Insane how much better this is than what I have.
The best graphics you really need, Ultra, of course.
Content's gonna look good.
And what's the point of all the power if you can't see it? Players will also be using the Alienware 25-inch 240Hz monitors.
Man, when I load into scrims with this bad boy, I'm gonna feed so hard. And it's gonna be in perfect picture quality.
We are so excited to be partnering with Alienware for Season 8 of the SMITE Pro League. And the best part is, this VIP treatment, it's not just for the pros. You too can get the best possible SMITE experience. Just go to smitegame.com/Alienware and use code SMITEAW to get special discounts on some of Alienware's best products. Thanks again to Alienware. Make sure you're following them on Twitter and Instagram. That's at Alienware on both platforms. And you can join their community at alienwarearena.com.
And you're telling me an alien wore this?
Hello and welcome to week number 8, the final week of regular play for Phase 2 in the SPL, powered by our title sponsor, Alienware. Thank you so much to Alienware for being our sponsor this season. You can get yourself some sick Alienware gear over at smitegame.com/Alienware. Use code SMITEAW to get discount codes on all the things like the Aurora Ryzen 10 Edition desktop or the gaming monitor 25-inch wide, 240Hz strong, available for you. Thank you once again, Alienware, for it. And week number 8, the big week, and what big games we have to kick the week off. Jade Dragons and Camelot Kings to start the week off. Taco, this is going to be a huge one. J-Mac and Taco joining me for this this weekend. This is huge.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I don't think you can really put enough emphasis on it. The fact that we're getting to see the Jade Dragons up against the Camelot Kings to start off this final week of competition for the Split 2 playoffs, there's a lot of implications here, J-Mac. It's not just the playoff seeding that I think we have to keep an eye out for, but you have to remember a lot of these teams strategizing heading into the Split 2 playoffs. You don't really want to reveal that much, but at the same time, you don't want to be dropping any sets either on that closing week.
And we also have the Oni Warriors and the Tartarus Titans playing today. While they may not be in the big battle for first seed, that's still a huge matchup for these guys as well, as they're going to be battling for that 5th, 6th position, as you can see by the standing. Sure, Tartarus Titans are sitting at 6 and 6, but if the Oni Warriors can get a game over them today, that could potentially bump those Tartarus Titans down into 6th seed, and that's not a position you want to be going towards playoffs. But we also do have later on this week, as we highlighted multiple times on the desk during the SPL waiting room, the Bolts and the Leviathans are going to be playing against each other. That's here in the studio tomorrow. And the Valhalla Valkyries and the Solar Scarabs are also going to be matching off against each other, and that could be one that can also shake up their standings for it. But enough about the standings, enough about all of the future stuff. We're in the here and now with the Camelot Kings and the Dragons. We're going to talk a little bit about the Camelot Kings to kind of start this one off here. They did beat the Bolts. They are the ones who stopped the Bolts' undefeated streak. They're the ones who said, your 8-0 looks nice, but there needs to be a little 1 at the end of that one instead. So they take them down, and now we kind of get a pivot towards them now, again, being in 2nd seed behind the Bolts, but with a win here, they could knock them out.
And a lot of that contribution for the Camelot Kings' success, I mean, some of the obvious factors are going to be genetics, variety. I think the front line that this team is able to control brings so much to the board, but more importantly, it's about that follow-up after the fact, and so much of that, I think, is just worked through big man Tings. And Tings, I think, has just been such an instrumental part of this roster. He has been extremely flexible as well, which is, I think, something that's relatively impressive, given the fact that genetics and Tings, they're both playing off of ping, and you wouldn't naturally assume or be inclined to believe that, even based off some of the stuff that we've seen Tings be able to do individually.
And that's one of the big things that big man Tings has to offer compared to some of the other mid laners is he's flexible with, the stuff that's meta, the Tiamats, Morgan Le Fay, even Giannis throwing in there. But he's also got Hera in his back pocket. We've seen that strategy brought out by the Kings multiple games now where they want to get this Hera, but it's usually on the tail end of making sure you have genetics on the Khepri. So we'll see where the Camelot Kings are able to kind of shift their picks and bans around this mid laner this time around.
Well, I think that some of those recent updates might have a little bit more to do with the drafting that takes place here. Conduit Gem, have to remember receiving that little bit of a buff. Shroud being tuned down a notch means that we might be seeing more Giannis than we might have originally anticipated, and I can't think of anybody that might be scarier other than, well, I guess, in this set, at least, between Hurry and Big Man Tings, Giannis could be the pick.
Yeah, that's going to be a big matchup for it. We do have Big Man Tings standing by for an interview for the Kings. We'll kind of talk to him a little bit before this set goes through. Big Man Tings, I think kind of first question I want to throw is, this Hera has kind of been a big pick for you guys. I know that you've picked it a few times throughout the season. What's so good about Hera that all of a sudden it seems to only be you and Darda's really focusing her?
I don't know. I just think she's just a good god people have been sleeping on for a while. She does a lot of damage, and she's just good at killing carries. So like those immobile mages or ADC, she's pretty good against. So.
Do you think with the new patch and, as previously mentioned, this Conduit Gem kind of getting a little bit of buff, do you think maybe we see a little bit more of her because of it?
We could do, yeah. It's going to help her early game a little bit, and therefore helps her transition to that mid game where she's pretty strong.
You guys done any kind of work? Going against the Dragons, they're right below you guys in the seeding. Has there been any kind of discussion as far as the drafts go, maybe the in game that you have to try and worry about for them?
No, we're just going to play our game. Going to Dragons side, we've had a pretty good talk, I'd say, about it. So we just need to play our game, go into it with our preparation, and hopefully it works.
Previous teams, we've seen a lot of more like the jungle focus. I know against your team specifically, there's been a lot of the Guardian focus for bans, making sure it takes up from genetics. Do you think now with the new patch coming through just recently that you guys are going to be playing on with some of the shakeup we might see in mid, do you think we might see more of those kind of mid-centric picks and bans?
Potentially, yeah. I think it goes on a team-by-team basis, I'd say, regarding that, but definitely could see the switch towards some more mid bans with some of the changes being made.
Well, thank you so much, Big Man Tings, for the interview. Good luck in your game today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So, a little bit confident coming through here. As always with a lot of these teams, you always ask me, did you guys do any prep work for it? And a lot of times they just say, we're just here to play our game. You take it one game at a time, and I think that's the best option for it. And for Big Man Tings going up against Hurrywin, it's a tall task for it. We'll talk a little bit about Hurrywin in a moment, but it seems like they're confident and happy, ready to go into this Dragons game.
I think when it comes to any given set, there's a certain level of unknown that just becomes a factor here. Like, for example, when you ask him about, is it going to be mid-centric focus? I love the response from Tings saying that, well, it really just varies set by set, team by team. And I think that when it comes to a team like the Jade Dragons, they are incredibly aggressive. I think they also like to control a lot of that through the mid lane. I know people tend to give Hurrywin a lot of flack, but quite honestly, there is a reason he gets camped as often as he does, and that is because he is, without a doubt, one of the best mid laners I think that we have in the league currently, and his gameplay speaks for itself a lot of the times.
I mean, you want to talk about an explosive start to the season for Hurrywin when everybody was kind of, Hurrywin's in mid, I wonder how this will go. He decides to just pick up Giannis and show the world why you need to ban this god away from him. He's been doing it for as long as Giannis has been in the SPL, for as long as Giannis has even existed. Hurrywin has really loved piloting that god, but it's not just the Giannis. He also has this Raijin that he likes to play. The Soul has been another go-to backup for him, and obviously, you know, when you can get Tiamat and Morgan Le Fay, I usually kind of graze past those because teams usually just don't let Tiamat through anymore, and sometimes we do see the response of Morgan Le Fay, but Hurrywin is a mid laner that I think does warrant at least 1 or 2 bans for him. If he doesn't get top picked, at least in his first 3, it's a player you have to ban going into the second phase.
I genuinely don't believe that there is a single mid laner that Hurrywin couldn't pilot for the Jade Dragons, but a lot of times we're going to see certain characters be a little bit more of a focus just because there are gods, you know, pending on updates, itemization choices, and things like that, that do tend to just have a little bit more viability at the competitive level, especially in comparison to that, which you would typically see in like your casual or ranked games, for example. But I think when it comes to Hurrywin and going up against the Camelot Kings, I wouldn't be surprised to see a little bit of that mid focus out of the Kings and a lot of the support focus coming from the Jade Dragons, because versatility really is the name of the game between these two teams, and I just feel like it's so hard to try and bound out any of these members on an individual basis. It's more so looking towards taking away picks that are going to make certain compositions like burst-based compositions, pick-based compositions, AoE control, things like that, a little bit more important here.
Now with this new patch coming through, it's not just a buff to a couple of the mid lane starter items like the Conduit Gem and then the nerf to Vampiric Shroud. There's also some jungle items that have been buffed with it. We have the Bumba's Spear and the Bumba's Hammer getting some adjustments for. We also have some interesting relics that are getting some adjustments here. The Bracer of Radiance that I think it's exclusively Polar Bear Mike is the only one who's been using it. He was using it pre-buff. This was when you only got the 10% power and the 10% movement speed, no matter what stage of it that it was leveled up. Now Bracer of Radiance has gotten that buff. You get 15% movement speed at tier 1 of it. When you upgrade it, now you get 15% bonus power when you're over that 50% threshold. Do we maybe start seeing a little bit of adjustment with the Bracer, maybe sneaking into a couple of builds?
Potentially. I mean, when it comes to the top end of SMITE, and I think for a lot of these top end SPL teams, it is going to be a little bit more of that team fight focus, especially when you consider that these teams just understand how to play through those objectives, and objective play is going to be surrounded by the team fight gameplay. So I could definitely see Bracer of Radiance having its impact, but I'm definitely keeping an eye on players like Twig, for example, with the Boomba Spear. Have to remember, he was one of the first, I think, to really pioneer that Boomba Spear, and he looked fantastic when he ran it last. I do believe that might have been back in Split 1. Don't believe it actually was something that we saw from him out of Split 2, given the adjustments that happened in between Splits 1 and 2 with that item in general. But seeing it now come back and the reverts go through, would not be surprised if we start seeing some of these junglers toying around a little bit more with the Boomba's territory.
And kind of speaking on the line of Captain Twig playing these more warrior-centric junglers like the Osiris and the Gilgamesh, even Mannequin Spear is getting a little bit, or Mannequin Scepter is getting a little bit of an adjustment here. It's giving you a little bit more leeway for that passive to kick in so that you can get the heal for it. It's already been such a popular item for it. I don't expect that one to be going away anytime soon. But we're also seeing one other big adjustment. That's going to be Sunder is getting a nerf. The tier 1 of it, which has just kind of been the go-to for a lot of the more aggressive supports like Fafnir, even Yamojis have been picking that one up. That's going to be cooldown nerf onto it, and then on the back end for it, it's going to be a damage or a damage increase nerf with it. that's enough theorizing about what we may see. Let's go ahead and see what we'll actually be seeing in these games. Picks and bans are ready for game 1. I'm very interested to see where a lot of these drafts are going to centralize.
Well, with the Camelot Kings being in that first pick position, again, have to expect that some of those more priority bans like the Giannis, possibly even Ryzen being a very heavily contested mid laner between these two teams. I know that Tings definitely feels comfortable and confident whenever he gets the Hera, but you have to remember how well that Hera was executed in their most recent set. So I think that the Jade Dragons, they are certainly a team to do their homework, and they've probably come up with some very similar shutdown strategies against the Hera, because I think what makes Hera so awesome is the front line surrounding her. And so if the Jade Dragons are able to take away some of those essential dive assets, then that could be problematic for the Kings. And already Osiris going to be taken away, and that has been a big one for the Kings.
And not just that, it was also the Khepri that you coupled along with the Hera. I think that's what made her so powerful for the Kings, and we saw it respectively banned away the next 2 games between the Kings and Leviathans match. And second game, the Hera really struggled because she didn't have that extremely safe backline support that comes from a Khepri. But as the final bans go through, we do see a Giannis ban. Both these players like Giannis, with the recent buff to the Conduit Gem, makes his early a little bit better with it, a little bit more power. But overall, just the slipperiness of this mage, the ability to weave in and out of fights, get your team across the map, has made him such a diverse pick, and kind of this resurgence that we see at the tail end of Phase 2. On the flip side, we see the Tiamat, the Osiris, as you highlighted, Gilgamesh banned away, and Artemis Odin, and that just leaves a very dangerous pick for first one. Usually Genetics gets this one insta-ban from him, but Ymir, the first pick.
Well, Ryzen's going to be the immediate response. Talked about how that Giannis, Ryzen were probably going to be 2 of the centerpieces as far as mid-focus was concerned, because you have to assume Jade Dragons, they're content with playing into Morgan Le Fay, getting a pick like Ryzen online. A lot of range damage there that could be applied, so maybe Morgan Le Fay a little bit less problematic here. And pairing the Circuit alongside of it could mean trouble for this Ymir. Yes, it's a strong pick for Genetics. Yes, Genetics always looks fantastic on the Ymir. He's had great, I think, placements with his walls especially, and his ability to separate teamfights and cause chaos could be hindered though because of this Circuit. So much mobility, very difficult I think for a more immobile Guardian like Ymir to get away, but Jade Dragons maybe wanted to take some notes towards the double Guardian playstyle the Camelot Kings have been opting for, because I could see a potential Cerberus or Terra in the future here for the Kings.
It would not surprise me one bit if we saw either of those Guardians, especially the Cerberus. He has been such a popular pick. I say she because we see the Hell immediately lock in, speaking of popular picks, who has really risen as of recent between mid and solo, some flexibility for it, so it doesn't leave the Jade Dragons out just yet. They can't just say, okay, cool, Hell's in, start banning solo. There's still the best possibility it will go solo, and then they just wasted a couple picks for mid. But we talked about all these other guys, all these things that you got to take away. You got to make sure to ban away from XYZ player. Completely forgot about the fact that Yemoja wasn't even banned and makes it all the way to 3rd pick for the Dragons.
I can't blame the Kings, though. When you think about some of the other priorities that have to take place up against the Jade Dragons, I definitely respect that Artemis Odin ban out alongside the Giannis, but Jade Dragons, they're also not convinced that this Hell is intended for the mid lane. They're going to go ahead and ban that Persephone just because why not? She is eligible for play, yet again, she was bugged. That's been fixed, and now she is available one more time for competitive play, but again, Jade Dragons, they're not going to allow her to come through in game number 1 for this set at the very least. And I'm not going to lie, J-Mag, looking at these top 3 is just a direct comparison. Yes, we've seen a lot of positives from the Camelot Kings in past performances with the top 3 that they've opted for so far. Netroid, especially on that ROM, has always looked so strong, but Yemoja, I think, is the real game changer between these 2 top 3 so far, because Ymir, yeah, he's got a wall, but Yemoja's got 2 even
big
better.
ones.
And I think that for gods that have as little of mobility as what the Kings have opted for, the Jade Dragons certainly have a very big advantage, I would imagine, in terms of just collapse potential.
And I think, we kind of briefly mentioned the Persephone. She's now back and available for play. That could even more now shake up some of these mid lane picks and kind of shake up some of the draft potential, because for a few of our mid laners here, I think Darda's, Big Man Tings, especially with those 2, They really do like this Persephone. I think even Shinto has a pretty strong Persephone. That was a very hot pick for him earlier on in the season. And now the fact that she is back and available for play is a little threatening as far as the drafts go. Now you've got to make a lot of big decisions. The Jade Dragons, their decision is to take the Cerberus for themselves. While they had the Camelot Kings, they did ban the Izanami and the Kabrakan, taking a shot at Finoke from his performance with it. And in response, the Camelot Kings grabbed Merlin, so the Hell will not be going to mid lane. It will be going the way of Variety for the solo.
And this is a very aggressive composition so far from the Jade Dragons. I think that the Camelot Kings have some pieces to look for the response here, most notably looking at that Erlong Shen, but I am concerned about the power spikes currently for the Camelot Kings. I do feel as though the Jade Dragons have a slight edge throughout the laning phases at the very least, and I also think that when it comes down to it, Cerberus compared to Hell in a team fight environment, I would just place a little bit more favoritism towards that Cerberus because of the River's Rebuke that's going to be right behind him. And as far as Panda Cat is concerned, I mean, the world is his oyster at this point in time. No real hunter bans against him other than the Izanami and the Rom haven't been taken away, but Panda is such a diverse player within his own right, and the Ho Yi to boot just doubling down on all of that AoE presence for the Jade Dragons.
Now, one thing that does have to be highlighted, even with this Ho Yi, it's been played 3 times so far, but hasn't found any success just yet. But yeah, Panda Cat, it doesn't matter what hunters you ban away. He's played Scotty, he's played Amuzen Cobb, so he can play literally any physical hunter that he wants, and he can also play any of the magical hunters if they're available to it, though I don't see we'll see things like Freya for it. But Erlong Shen is the final pick for the Camelot Kings, going over to the way of Captain Twig. How does this fare for him compared to the usual Osiris Gilgamesh that we see for him?
Well, Turket definitely noted as one of the more obvious counter matchups against this Erlong Shen. She does a great job, I think, at just kind of shutting down a lot of that initiation presence, because what you're looking for primarily off of the Erlong, that blink knockup from the turtle form in those 72 transformations. Well, guess what? Now you're going to have to try and work that through the Turket taunt. Now you're going to have to try and work that through the Turket last breath, so you're not he's at a potential now to not even get the sustain that he would normally be able to rely on, I think, to continue trying to press forward up against this Jade Dragons draft in mid lane. And not only that, but I think that the level 2 advantages that this Turket Raijin could potentially have over the Merlin Erlong, I mean, that is just so much burst from the Raijin alone. It's definitely going to be some murky waters here, I think, for the Camelot Kings. They're going to have to tread lightly.
Yeah, because one thing for Raijin, even though he did get a slight nerf in this patch, it was towards his later half of the game with the Raiju. That's still going to do the same damage at level 1, level 2 in that mid lane skirmish. So the fact that Raijin is still so heavily prioritized, even despite, potential late game Raiju nerfs, whatever. A few little ticks of damage away from just the base power lane. So we'll have to see how that all works out for him. But we do have a little bit of pause coming through here. We're going to take it to a quick break, and then we'll come back to get you guys started for this Camelot Kings and Jade Dragons match. Welcome back, everybody. Sorry for the delay. We're going to make sure to get you guys into game here very shortly. It's just a brief pause popping through at the early stages. But before we jump into the game, Taco, let's kind of talk about these drafts one more time. For Camelot Kings, they've drafted, well, kind of a Camelot Kings style draft. You can kind of say for the same for the Jade Dragons. What's this win condition for these two teams?
I think a lot of it's going to kind of hinge around how well the Camelot Kings can actually use this Hell Cleanse to their advantage. But again, the concern that I have is that they have one Hell Cleanse, and yes, it can be fantastic against the likes of a Stingent Torment, for example, where you're going to be expecting maybe more than just one member to be focused out. And granted, the AoE on that Hell Cleanse can definitely be a great anti-factor for the AoE of the Jade Dragons, but again, they've got the Yemoja, they've got the Circuit, there's even the Raijin, I think, the Taiko Drums. You don't necessarily have to use that ability in an aggressive manner, only looking for the damage. You can always use it for the taunt back as well, and I think this is all just going to be excellent step-by-step setup here from the Jade Dragons, because this is a team where we have regularly said, I know for a fact myself, I've caught myself so many times in these Jade Dragons compositions where I'll just say, they have to have the perfect execution. And what do? With even crazier comps than this, they have the most flawless execution imaginable. And I just think that when they have as many team fighting elements as they do, back to back to back, it can be incredibly overwhelming to deal with. I wouldn't say that this is going to be one where the Kings just, roll over and die by any means, but I am expecting a lot of early aggression out of this Jade Dragons composition, and a lot of that might even be centered around the solo lane, because Finoke, he's certainly someone that we've seen wanting to be a lot more aggressive in solo in general. He's been doing a lot of rotations and trying to take gods that I think are better for rotating to have a little bit more of that impact in the early to mid game, so definitely something for the Camelot Kings to keep an eye out for.
Yeah, the Kings are no stranger to a stark contest against them. They had their matchup with the Bolts. That was a huge one for them, and they were able to topple them, and a lot of it thanks to the help of this Ymir from Genetics. So yeah, Yemoja walls are great, but they've got one of their key players on one of his key gods. We'll see if the Camelot Kings can do it in game number 1 as we take it over to Dulcin and Mifflin for the cast.
It's the final weekend of phase number 2 here in Season 8, and what a way to start it off. What?
Are you serious?
Well, we have this weekend and then phase 2 playoffs next weekend.
You heard it here first, fans. Phase 2 play. Well, clearly not first, right? We've surely said it somewhere else.
We've absolutely said that phase 2 playoffs is next weekend at some point.
Say it one more time, though, just in case they weren't listening.
It's the final weekend of phase number 2 here prior to the phase 2 playoffs kicking off next weekend. And what a way to start it off. The Camelot Kings and the Jade Dragons. And Miff, this is very important. They are still fighting for seeding. We talked about it on the waiting room. There's still a feasible way for all the top 4 teams to make some movements here, and that's impactful when you consider all the opponents that you could be going up against in the phase 2 playoffs. Everyone playing at their best, and so this one should be a lot of fun to watch here between 2 top teams.
Yeah, I believe if the Jade Dragons come out with a win in this set, it drops the Camelot Kings down to 4th seed, if my math checks out. And yeah, I don't trust my math, Dave, if history's any indicator.
Interesting pickup already for Genetics here, Miff, because we often talk about when do we see Phantom prioritized, and it's if there's an Odin plus Ymir or Yemoja on the other side, but already PBM's threat here on this Yem pick in the duo lane enough to make Genetics think about his starter item.
And it also helps him out with a little bit of damage mitigation relic. Act is a little bit dated, but damage mitigation on the upgrade should help it out a fair bit. I believe it's about 15%, which is pretty sizable. I mean, you could pick up this item legitimately if you just want the damage mitigation. It's that powerful, and so I'm not going to question Genetics too much here as of right now. And also does allow you to have the counterplay of drop your own Ymir wall, Phantom your team, and well, you're walking through it. Maybe we see that come through. Could be
the aggressive Phantom, eh? Interesting. All right. I'll hold you to that, Miff. I want to see it at some point here this game. Look, Genetics, the king, apt because he's on the Kings, the king of dropping great walls and setting up for his team. And so maybe we see some offensive walls set up for Genetics' team throughout this game. Everyone else on the Camelot Kings go beads here with a Circuit, Raijin, Yemoja, Hou-Yi. Maybe not surprising. PBM exerting some dominance over Netrioid already, who takes one final stun. Plenty of damage being pushed over here into the duo lane. My goodness. Netrioid is playing with fire, just hanging out here underneath his own Tier 1 tower. Unfortunately, not the same level of sustain for Netrioid that Panda Cat has with the Yemoja in lane there. Brilliant Riptide nearly combines. I feel like we got to keep our senses with us here over in this duo lane for a little bit longer. Though Netrioid pops a couple pots, keeps himself active. It's in moments like this, though, where you have to look, where is Captain Twig? Well, he's on the right side of the map, so PBM and PandaCat are just fine.
Speaking of junglers, Sanford Soccer does not often go towards this Sirket pick. I think this is something that we've only seen very recently from him, so I'm excited to see how it pans out, and so far, pretty good.
That is a lot of damage onto big man Tings, who still has speed. Percussive Storm is enough, and Hurrywin waltzes on in on the back end of a Sanford Soccer invade and picks up first blood. Uh-oh, now Genetics under some threat as well, but already healthy enough. So Genetics will walk away, but it's going to be a purple buff drop as well here. Lots of buffs being taken away from the Camelot Kings as well as first blood.
Could have been 2 kills. I don't think PandaCat has Mark of the Crow just yet, so no stun available to target out Genetics inside of the jungle, which means that kill naturally will fizzle. But this is the Jade Dragons classic win condition, isn't it? Early game aggression, into the red buff, into the purple buff, first blood off of an invade, and Captain Twig trying to find something on the opposite side, invading the Jade Dragons side of the map, back camps at least.
Little jungle steal for Captain Twig, so that at least feels okay. You want to get to level 5 on this Erlang Shen, start to make an impact in these lanes. Say again?
He left the big one. He took both smalls and left the big. That's interesting.
Is that interesting?
I mean, normally you'd want to take the big and a small, right? That's the most farm you could steal if you're trying to leave something.
Is there a world where he's not sure how much time he has, so he just takes what he can and gets out?
If that's the case, he wouldn't go for the double small in the second camp, right? He at least get the big farm. We are really getting into the nitty-gritty.
Yeah, but don't you love doing that every once in a while, Myth? Who knows what Captain Twig is thinking there? He's like, all right, I'm going to steal something and leave, and he was at least able to do that. A bit of a different start over here for Netrioid as well. Remember, we talked about Genetics and the relic that he picked up. Phantom early on. Netrioid has gone with the old Gilded Arrow here, Myth, when that was, popular all throughout the start of Season 8. Saw a little bit of a dip in play here, and maybe now a bit of a rise again with Netrioid picking it up.
I mean, it makes sense. 20% attack speed as a stat stick early on is pretty strong. If you go for the Silver Branch, I mean, you're going to get additional power pretty consistently from it. Maybe doesn't have as good as upgrade options as the Cowl does. I mean, that item is just nuts, giving you both movement speed or additional attack speed, depending on what you need at any given moment. But I'm excited to see how this one pans out for Netrioid. Should be able to at least sustain pretty well in lane just by nature of clearing wave better.
Red buff invade yet again for the Jade Dragons. Remember, last time we saw this, Sanford Soccer helped out with first blood onto big man Tings. Red buff dropped by the Jade Dragons. Genetics, not much that he can say about it, nor Captain Twig. So the Erlang Shen will go searching elsewhere. Not often we get to see this Ho Yi pick. Haven't seen it much in the current meta, but apparently it's working pretty well. Helps that you've got PBM on Yamoja in your lane. I do want to talk a little bit more about these starter items here, Mifflin. Cal has felt good for, I think, a lot of hunters here recently. Do you think there's going to be a lack of lifesteal in this build for Netrioid that makes things difficult as far as sustain in lane? Maybe he feels like he's got to go Aussie with one of these items. Is that a legitimate concern here for this run?
I believe so. I think it really does indicate that Aussie is likely to come through inside of his build. That's really the only other place he's able to pull sustain unless he goes for maybe that new age build, that Zapman-esque build where it's you immediately go into that Light Blade for Executioner. We see sometimes you go towards a more dedicated lifesteal item a little bit later on, but ROM synergizes so well with the bow build that you kind of want to stick to that attack speed kind of style. So I do believe we will see an Aussie, but it certainly is interesting to see Gilded Arrow, and I'm excited to see how he itemizes from here on out.
Luckily, the lifesteal hasn't affected Netrioid all that much outside of some pressure early on when PBM was in that lane. Now PBM is no longer in that lane. Still no foul picked up early for this Yamoja. So level 6 now for PBM. The roam begins here. Maybe you start to put some pressure onto Variety on the right side of the map. This was a Kings team that has really forged this Hell pick in the solo lane into victory. And some other teams in the league have absolutely picked it up, but it's really Kings plus Hell is what you think of. PandaCat alone. Captain Twig makes Netrioid not alone here. Drops the Sun's all, but it's a pin from Captain Twig, who's taking a lot of damage here. Taunt through, but he's got to get the kill.
He wins those!
Oh no, PandaCat has turned around the 2v1. Does he live? That's the question. Netrioid does not have his snipe.
He's out!
And he does not have the range. I asked on the Hunter waiting room, why don't you attack PandaCat? This is why, because he's got all the help in the world. Netrioid, he'll fall as well, and what a turnaround from the Jade Dragons.
If you are going to step to PandaCat, you better come correct with a poison-tipped dagger, because that first hit needs to ring true, and he turns it all around.
Uh-oh, the Jade Dragons, they keep their foot on the gas. Phantom used by Genetics, but he turns around for the double freeze, and that seals his fate. Sanford Soccer adds his first kill of the game, and this is the Jade Dragons that was missing in 2 out of the 3 games against the Olympus Bolts. The team that just runs it at you early on in the game and doesn't look back. And so now the Jade Dragons have built themselves a very healthy 2,000 gold lead 7 minutes into the game here, Mifflin. Everyone feels like they're getting involved except for the solo laners, because that's kind of what we've seen here as of late.
It's in the name.
A perfect start for the Jade Dragons.
Yeah, the Dragons are the team of our matches are going to be quick and they're going to be one-sided one way or the other. Not many teams are dragging out these engagements against the Jade Dragons. Instead, it's about who gets off to a roaring start, and now it's Twig off to a roaring start, at least able to force Sanford Soccer back to base.
Twig had his ult there, maybe looking at a kill on a Sanford Soccer who didn't have much mana or much health. At least it'll be a jungle invade now for the Camelot Kings. Blue buff not ready to go. Fino K has to be careful here. 3 members of the Camelot Kings looking towards this tier 1 tower. Fino has his ultimate. He also has Blink. Blink plus jump equals safety. Captain Twig. Oh, it's a great wall from Genetics to keep his jungler at bay of the impending threat. So the Jade Dragons mainly. Fino K will get away with one. Unfortunately, looks like this tier 1 tower may go down.
Twig didn't trust his support there, Dave. Uses the beads when he doesn't really have to. That wall from Genetics would have accomplished the exact same thing, so at least defensive relic stripped away from the jungler Captain Twig, and Fino K losing out on his tier 1 tower. Not the biggest deal. I think it's one of the least valuable tier 1s in the game. Not often are you retreating to the soul lane in poor situations. Pyromancer, Fire Giant fights generally, you're headed towards mid either way. This could create a situation where Fino K just freezes the wave at his tier 2 and strips away a lot of that farm potential from Variety, and being a Hell, you kind of want that farm early on.
And then we have to talk about, against this Hell, how anti-heal starts to factor into the equation for the Jade Dragons. As they start up the Gold Fury, nobody from the Camelot Kings in range. Netrioid could make things interesting if he wanted to attempt to steal.
He doesn't know.
I don't think he will. And so the Gold Fury will go to the Jade Dragons under 10 minutes into this game, and so that gold lead builds up to about 2,500 now for this Dragons team. But anti-heal then becomes an important topic of conversation here. Mifflin. Fino K's already got a Pestilence online. Raijin, as we actually talked about on the waiting room, a great spreader of Divine Ruin. So that's maybe something we see here for Hurrywind, who's gone Chronos Pendant, and then it looks like an early Obsidian Shard here. So there's a lot of damage already coming out of this mid lane.
Yeah, he is swinging for the fences as it stands. With 2-0, still 1 level down on Big Man Tings, and it's not just the Pestilence coming through from Fino K, it's also the Tainted Steel, the inherent kind of life steal or healing steal that Cerberus has within his kit, and then you've at least got PBM to match up what this Hell is bringing, or what you're not able to strip away from this Hell, just with passive Yamoji healing, be it through auto attacks or the second ability. I think the Jade Dragons have come away with a very strong draft to contend with what the Camelot Kings have so far. I don't necessarily fully agree with the desk in that Variety, I think, is still going to bring a lot to these late game team fights. The cleanse is going to be very strong. Stygian Torment going to struggle with confirming these kills. Sanford Soccer's ultimate is very choreographed. You really do know, or telegraphed rather, when he's using it and where he's trying to toss somebody. Cleanse can stop that as well. Even the Tycho drums, going to be very hard to use those for self-peel if Variety's around inside of these engagements. Jade Dragons, I think, have great tools, but it comes down to execution on field, and so far, they're executing.
Yeah, they have absolutely executed, and while it might seem like the game has slowed down, it has in the kill department. Remember, the Jade Dragons, they get themselves the Gold Fury a moment ago. It's these neutral objectives where the Jade Dragons are constantly able to springboard those early leads into more massive mid and then late game leads, and so Pyromancer then has to be something that's on mind here. But maybe it's about just not rolling the dice on needless fights here for the Jade Dragons. You've got a great lead, and maybe the mindset then has to transform into, let's fight around these neutral objectives, or let's try to confirm these neutral objectives. Let's invade these buffs as we can, and the Camelot Kings might not have much of an answer.
Take a peek at Panda Cat's build here, Dave. Already has a full rage and a 3-level lead over Netroid, who does look like he's building immediately into that Aussie to shore up some of that lifesteal. I think Panda Cat is not only shredding objectives, but gods already. Generally, early crit kind of feels pretty bad. You need that Deathbringer. You've already got a little bit of defense ringing through, but he's got such a large lead already that I think he's shredding anybody he touches.
Fino K's rotated over from solo lane here to the mid lane. Could this be a fight brewing for the Jade Dragons? No, it's not, and the Camelot Kings will back themselves away. Big Man Tings hasn't gotten the same 2 kills or 1 assist that Hurrywind's got, but he's on a Merlin. He's even in levels with this Raijin. Got a Charon's Coin and a Soul Gem, so there's still plenty of damage to come out of this mid lane here for the Camelot Kings. What can you do against Fino K here? The tier 1 tower is down, so you got more range to fight in this one. Cleanse on the Captain Twig will negate the Stygian Torment. Captain Twig has the ultimate, but he won't get a chance to use it. Polar Bear Mike rotates over, so Fino K is able just to walk away.
Yeah, look at that. Final K is already so hard to kill with all that defense and building into a breastplate of valor as well. Mike, though, way easier to kill.
PBM, he'll use the beads here, and then the River's Rebuke. He'll Riptide himself away. Captain Twig trying to chase him down, but PBM, one final Riptide, secures his escape. And now Final K, the target of Variety. That was a collapse onto one target for the Camelot Kings. And they're able to do half of PBM's HP, and that's about it. Maybe now eyes to the Pyro, but instead no good. And the Camelot Kings will realize they're coming up empty-handed and back off.
That was a pretty expensive attempt there from the Camelot Kings. Cost them their Heavenly Sprint as well as their Phantom. Jade Dragons, on the other hand, just used the beads on Mike, but still is an opportunity for the Kings to look towards this true objective with all that space created, and it will go their way. Gold lead, though, still largely in favor of the Dragons.
Oh, Sanford Soccer, he's engaged onto big man Tings here. Look at the Taiko drums. They're perfect from Hurrywind. Nearly gets the kill, and in fact it does onto big man Tings. Now it's a killing spree for Hurrywind out of the mid lane. Chronos Pendant plus early Obsidian Shard, I guess, does a lot of damage to BMT. So now Tier 1 tower in the mid lane, plus a kill for the Jade Dragons.
Surely not a speed buff steal here. Sanford Soccer tries his best and does get it over the wall with ambush, gets him out alive, and that's a kill onto big man Tings, a Tier 1 tower, a speed buff invade, and now a red invade as well. The Jade Dragons are in peak form.
They absolutely are. It's those little moments. Let's steal a speed buff away. Let's make Captain Twig life a little bit more difficult. Let's take this red buff away on cooldown. The purple buff now has gotten invaded as many times as I've seen it up on this side of the map. There's a Fury respawning in a moment. Remember, the Camelot Kings got the Pyro a second ago, and so now it'll be Fury maybe attempted for the Jade Dragons shortly.
Panda Cat has been quiet so far this game since that early explosion of aggression, but somehow nets himself a 4-level lead, level 16 to Netrioids just now ticking over to 13, and Wind Demon completed. Yeah, Netrioid, he's essentially a non-factor compared to Panda Cat at this point, who has a little bit of penetration, has a ton of crit, is going to be shredding these objectives. I think the Camelot Kings have no opportunity to leave the Jade Dragons alone on this left-hand side of the map because only Fury's up, and Panda Cat's going to make very short work of it.
And it doesn't stop there, Mifflin. There's a 2-level lead in the mid lane for Hurrywind. There's a 2-level lead for Polar Bear Mike in support. And so the Oni Fury doesn't have levels, but I imagine it's a few levels down on the Jade Dragons here. And so the Jade Dragons take that one down with ease. How do the Camelot Kings respond? It's pushing up the lanes that we can. They are looking at the Tier 2 tower on right. Jade Dragons hovering, seeing if anyone from the Camelot Kings overextends. This would be an okay win if the Camelot Kings were able to get this tower, but you've got a couple members of the Jade Dragons closing this gap. Can you at least get the tower? Hurrywind's got something to say about it. It's a taunt through from Captain Twig. Taiko drums, pouring out just a little bit of damage, finds about half of Twig's HP and half of Variety's HP as well. Stygian Torment for Fine OK. Will drop Variety right where he is. Sanford Soccer looping around the backside. This hill is in some danger, and Final K burns her down for the kill.
Well, we'll see whether or not Captain Twig's able to make his way out. There's the beads, and the transformation's good, or maybe not. Great stun, Hurrywin. Credit for that kill, and nice little micro play from the Camelot Kings. The taunt from the Taiko drum was denied, but at the end of the day, the Dragons get what they want.
Well, and the Kings are sending 3 to the duo lane here to kill off Panda Cat. And it won't matter. Genetics is going to take a lot of damage there. Bang Van Tings realizes it's a fruitless effort, and Netrioid, he just wants to farm, close up that 3-level gap a little bit. So not only did the Camelot Kings not get the Tier 2 tower on right,
they're
going to lose their own Tier 2 tower, plus a couple of kills. This game, I was going to say slowly being pulled away from the Camelot Kings, but I don't know if a 6,000 gold lead in 16 minutes is all that slow here for the Jade Dragons. And this one's starting to spiral just a little bit. Still grouping.
Not the speed.
It's going to be another speed buff invade if
no, don't do it.
Captain Twig wants to go secure it. He'll transform. Oh, no, he uses his transformation. Taunt through. Goodbye, Captain Twig. Hurrywind will put him on down for the rampage.
And then he jumps aggressively into the lane, trying to catch out Variety as well. The Jade Dragons are just bullying at this point. And the Camelot Kings have a couple options. They could turn off their monitor so you're not getting cyberbullied anymore. Yeah, right. They could show up to this fire giant and potentially try and put up a steal, but nobody's really in range as of yet, and it is getting absolutely shredded.
PBM loves this frenzy, whether he's on the Fafnir or on literally any other support. Helps his team get these objectives quicker. And quietly goes the FG to the Jade Dragons. That is early. That is not even 17 minutes in we've done this FG now. No surprise given the way that this game has gone. And so now it's about the Camelot Kings, I guess, Miff, just delaying this game out and trying to fight under these Phoenixes, but I'm not sure you're winning a fight anywhere on the map against this Jade Dragons team.
No, the defense is going to have to look good from them, and you're going to have to pray for some mistakes at this point from the Jade Dragons with a 7,000 gold lead and Fire Giant to boot. Only 2 Tier 2 towers still standing for the Camelot Kings, so this gold lead isn't going to balloon out too much further than what we're looking at right now, barring some pretty extenuating circumstances, but potentially some kills for the Jade Dragons. So I think you're right to say that the Kings are likely going to defend on the Phoenix and not these Tier 2s, and I think that's probably the right call for them to make. Their defense is good, but the deficit that they're playing at makes it a little bit less good. For in particular, Captain Twig at level 13, Stone Cutting Sword, Wing Blade, Balanced Blade. He doesn't have a whole lot of power. He doesn't really have the ability to stick in these team fights very long because of Ankh from Finoke denying him all that effective HP from his heal in the 9 turns Blessing. Twig, from behind right now, I think he's essentially a non-factor.
Yeah.
He has to separate these engagements.
I mean, somebody's got to kill Hurrywin, and I don't see how that happens. Hurry is 502, 2 levels up over Big Man Tings. All right, great, we kill Hurry. Now we got a 3-level lead on Panda Cat still. You could take those 2 in any order. Great, we kill Panda Cat, and now we've got Hurrywin, who's 502. These carries for the Jade Dragons have looked untouchable so far this game. A lot of that, in large part, thanks, of course, to the front lines and the engage of this Jade Dragons team. But it's a puzzle that I don't think even the Camelot Kings have an answer to right now. They're going to have to find an answer if they want to stay in this game. Tier 2 towers in both left and mid go down, and with that, the gold lead builds up to 9,000 or so. 19 minutes in. Maybe we'll crest that 10,000 mark with the Pyromancer here. And there's still a lot of time on this FG buff, Miff. 2 minutes left, so the Jade Dragons can go back if they want, spend up some of that 1,500 gold that everyone's got, and then maybe make a Phoenix attempt.
Camelot Kings, 19 minutes in, looking at a goose egg so far. Maybe
that's hard to do.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's happened a couple of times here in recent weeks, hasn't it? Very recently to the Jade Dragons, maybe trying to pay it forward here to the Camelot Kings. Their defense is good, Dave. I mean, it is legitimately a good defensive comp from the Camelot Kings. It's just so hard to play against. This could be an opportunity if they could spot out Sanford Soccer if he moves up a little bit too aggressively, but with the backing of his team right there, PBM and Hurrywin so close by, Camelot Kings rightfully decide to go ahead and retreat back to their Phoenix. And this is why we initially thought that there was going to be Phoenix defense rather than Tier 2s. Jade Dragons burn a lot of their time just traversing the map. Only 1 minute left on this Fire Giant power play, but Smite's a fast game, and 1 minute's a long time.
And no ward coverage for the Kings in their own jungle, just outside of the left side of their base, though I think you know where the Jade Dragons are going to be pushing. It's the left side of the map here. Could be a very quick game here if the Jade Dragons are able to close it off. Wall for wall, but one is an ult and the other is just an ability, so Genetics may be out ahead of that engagement. Variety gets stunned on through. Panda Cat takes some damage in return, and Variety will help sustain up the rest of his team here just a little bit. Draugr buff is there for the Camelot Kings. Might play a role if the Jade Dragons try to quickly get this one taken down.
It is Heavenly Sprint traded out by Variety there, so that's a good deal of utility lost on the escape, but could still be an aggressive play here from the Kings. If they can get Twig in the back, that's a start.
Poor Mike pinned down. 30 seconds left on the FG buff. Finoke has found Netrioid, and look at the damage Fino is doing alone, being tickled by Netrioid with those auto attacks. Left side Phoenix still stands here. Suns break down from Panda Cat. No ults remaining from the Jade Dragons. A couple still there for the Camelot Kings, notably Captain Twig. I'm not sure he wants to taunt anyone in from the Jade Dragons. The left side Phoenix goes down, and with 0 seconds remaining on the FG buff, it was timed perfectly, and the Jade Dragons have, I think, got about max value out of that FG.
And in that fight, there was a little micro moment where it puts on display my major concern now for the Camelot Kings, and it's a concern that I have, not for Captain Twig as the player, but the god Erlang Shen.
You just now have concerns for the Camelot Kings?
You know, it's been continuous, but I want to share it, Dave.
Please do.
He's level 15, and what did he do in that team fight? He hovered the edge of it, waiting for his opportunity to engage, and he realizes that, as you so eloquently put it, there's nobody he wants to taunt. There's nobody he wants to engage on. He just has to stay back. And with that being the case, he's essentially, as I said earlier, a non-factor. You're losing an engage tool, you're losing your backline dive, and it's going to be a long time until you get that back. He is level 15, 5 to go to 20, and
Mike is level 16.
Yeah, no, that's tough. And he's not even going a tanky path either, because he is behind. He's got to go for this burst build, and, well, I mean, who's he going on in the back line? It's so hard for Twig here.
That's tough, because look, early on in the game, I mean, Twig is somewhat high on these damage charts because early in the game, the Erlang Shen was swinging around, but That just hasn't happened once this game spiraled out of control. So Fire Giant started by the Jade Dragons. You can already see Camelot Kings all on the left side of the map. There will be no attempt on this one. I like the play from Fine OK here. Let's get this mid-wave pushing. Let's see if we can get the right wave pushing with Hurrywind here. We don't need everyone around the FG. Let's just make our life a little bit easier around mid and right side Phoenix sieges. Good news for the Camelot Kings. We've pushed up this left wave a pretty decent amount. So they bought themselves some time, but the Jade Dragons have got plenty of time to wait for those fire minions to push in should they choose.
And the Jade Dragons are grouped up on this right-hand side. It's just Big Man Ting showing presence inside the Phoenix itself. And I think the Dragons generally, when you're on Fire Giant Siege, it's about stripping away the defensive tools of your opposition. I don't think that's the game plan here for the Jade Dragons. I think they have got such a lead at this point that they can crush that initial siege. I'm talking Fine OK blinks in aggressive, finds the Ankh,
yeah, why not?
And then every single member, I'm talking literally all of them, can act as solo agents in this team fight. Every single one essentially has 1v1 potential against at least one member of the Camelot Kings. Keep your eye on this one, Dave. It could be a very fast siege.
Yeah, why not, right? I mean, you got blinks, you got leaps on most members, you got riptides to bring you in there. The ability to close the gap is prominent for the Jade Dragons as they walk forward. Wall from Genetics slows things down on the left side of this fight. Still, everyone in the game's got their ultimates. Everyone in the game has got their relics as well. Captain Twig taunts a few in, and it's Fine OK taking damage. Big Man Ting's far enough in the build to do some damage on this Merlin. Around the left side goes Sanford Soccer and Panda Cat Mike. Low in the back as Variety walks forward. Netrioid, he has to crash down out of the ultimate, but he's lost half of his health in the meantime. This one not as clean just yet for the Dragons.
That is a strange Phantom from Genetics there. Lost out on that capacity inside of the team fight. Sanford Soccer first in. Great wall!
Oh, it's a perfect wall, and that's kept Sam at bay. Camelot Kings on the board for the first time this game, 24 minutes in, and that has sent this Phoenix Siege right on back. Jade Dragons now have to wait 45 seconds for their jungler.
You can't let Genetics get this much time. Eventually, he is going to find a wall. That changes the fight. Twig, isolated though, should be able to make it out.
Uh-oh, a collapse in here from the Camelot Kings. Fine OK isolated. Fine OK decimated. Panda Cat locked in by Genetics as well. What is happening? The crumble of the Jade Dragons happening right outside the right side of the Camelot Kings base. And they are back in this game. They are down in gold, but their base stands.
Genetics is single-handedly diffing this game right now, Dave. I mean, that is him defending the Phoenix with those walls. That is him finding the pick inside the jungle. Could give a slight nod to Captain Twig, who uses his body as bait to force the Jade Dragons into a poor position. But now, the Camelot Kings, having stopped that Fire Giant siege, find themselves in a exponentially better situation. I'm talking beforehand, it was maybe 9-1 odds favored Jade Dragons. Now we're looking closer, 7-3, maybe 6-4. Still favoring the Jade Dragons as they have a massive lead, but this is so much better now for the Kings. They can essentially start to play proactively. This next Fire Giant, this is not a foregone conclusion. The Camelot Kings, for the first time, have the potential to step up.
And look at the way Genetics, if I'm remembering correctly, yeah, this is where Sam blinks
in.
So
gross.
He stuffs Sam for Soccer. Absolutely stuffs him. And that's such an interesting call then, Miff, because that's something I feel like you have to be wary of if you're the Jade Dragons, right? I mean, the fact that Genetics can separate out these fights has got to be something on the mind. Sam for Soccer thought maybe that the level disparity was big enough that a blink in and an engage wouldn't matter because they were so far ahead.
Sam for Soccer kind of hedged his bet on two separate coin tosses, either saying to himself, all right, I've gone the Bruiser build, I'm tanky enough to withstand at least the duration of my ultimate. He was wrong on that front. Or he's saying to himself, Genetics certainly doesn't have wall here, right? We've been fighting for so long, there's no way that ability is still available, and he's wrong on that front as well. And unfortunately, it cost him his life and then a couple of his teammates' lives. Now it's the Jade Dragons trying to establish dominance on the Primal Fury, and Camelot Kings, rightfully so, are not going to put up a contention here. Instead, they're going to wait for the actual Fire Giant itself, I believe. Jade Dragons will be approaching with a significant advantage on the Fire Giant now, thanks to the Primal Fury's buff, taking less damage percentage-wise and dealing more to the neutral objective. But I think the Camelot Kings have to be happy with the most recent pace of this game.
And now maybe we're going to see a little bit more confidence out of this Kings roster. There's been no contest on the last two FGs, but with some great play from the support, and then the damage finally starting to flow through from the Camelot Kings carries in a bit of a better position here. Look, everyone has closed up those XP gaps. The supports now, even in levels. Remember, Mike was ahead of effectively 3 members of the Camelot Kings a moment ago. Now that's gone by the wayside. Even in levels with Genetics here at this point, so XP effectively does not matter. Both supports have been able to get their starter item upgrades. Netrioid's still a little bit behind in the starter upgrade category. Probably the most even fight, though, we've seen since the first 10 minutes of the game.
Completely agree. So now it's time for Genetics to keep stepping up to the plate, and if he keeps playing like he has been, I trust him to do so. But Variety is going to have to get a lot of value from these cleanses. A couple times this game, the Camelot Kings have been getting some pretty good cleanses from Variety, but they haven't trusted him. They've used their own beads, they've used their own defensive tools. If they could just rely on this hell, that's going to give them a significant advantage.
Immediate start on the FG by the Jade Dragons. FineOK separating things out. He is stunned, and he is melted. FineOK leaps away. 3-man taunt from Captain Twig. That prompts out the ult here from PBM. Sanford Soccer yet again left alone with the Camelot Kings front line. And the Jade Dragons have to walk away. Captain Twig used his ultimate, and that's it. The Jade Dragons spent 3 ults there in that engagement, and that's why you see the Kings stepping forward.
FineOK actually goes back to base. I thought maybe we'd see him trying to hang around and have PBM heal him back up, but instead is making his way all the way back to the Titan room. Camelot Kings are not able to keep pushing their lead from here because a lot of their engage tools were used. Captain Twig's ultimate, notably, does connect with 3 and baits out the ultimate from PBM and Panda Cat. Great teamfight tools stripped away immediately, but the Camelot Kings aren't playing with a lead. They're playing with a pretty significant deficit still.
That's true.
So they have to approach this cautiously despite legitimately outplaying their opposition there.
Right, I said it's the most even fight, but that's a bit of a misnomer, right? It's not even. The Jade Dragons still in a power position in this game, and look how fast they're doing this FG. A wall from Genetics is going to make the Jade Dragons reset it, but you have to be second perfect here if you're the Camelot Kings because of the speed we just saw from the Jade Dragons on that Fire Giant. The Jade Dragons still in a spot where because of that FG speed, they can beckon the Camelot Kings to come in, try to steal something away, maybe try to contest. And so the Jade Dragons may be in a bit of a better position as far as dictating what type of fight they want to take. Variety has turned around his game after some early pressure on the right side of the map. 0-1-3 on this hill. We've reached that late game point. We're going to get to see some of the strength of this. A lot of it coming in the form of those cleanses, Viv. We've seen some of those Stygian Torments kind of mitigated out. And so Variety absolutely going to be a role player in this late game team fight.
The most distinct tonal shift I'm noticing is FineOK is not playing as if he is immortal anymore. He learned very quickly that he is not the frontliner that he once was in this match, and instead is playing it very close to the chest with the rest of his team. And a good wall creates a little bit of space for the Camelot Kings, and now they've established the defensive positioning, fighting themselves in and generating threat by pulling the Fire Giant. Jade Dragons forced to step forward, but the Kings don't love their DPS there and don't love their odds in a true 5-on-5. Instead, they need to use that Fire Giant as the unofficial 6-man.
There's a couple things you look at going into one of these team fights. The ultimates, well, they're all back up for everyone here in this game. The relics then, of course, become secondarily, or maybe primarily important. Both of the Jade Dragons carries do not have beads for 15 seconds, both used on cooldown in that last little skirmish that we saw around the FG. So there is some hesitancy from the Jade Dragons, at least for the next 5 seconds or so until those beads come back up. Same thing with Captain Twig here. Twig had a great taunt on through, and I think that's kind of what burned off those beads from the carries there of the Jade Dragons. Twig also had to use its beads in that little skirmish. So everyone in the game, as I finish that sentence, has their actives back up. Also, Fire Giant now enhanced since we started to do this little dance around the FG, so becoming ever so important for the Camelot Kings to step forward and try to contest. You have to watch the frenzy from Mike. That's when you know this Dragons team wants to commit onto the FG. Genetic steps forward, gets a freeze onto FineOK. A little damage, follows in on the back, and the leap gets used now by the Cerberus. Fire Giant taken down beneath half HP, but it's reset.
And it's the Jade Dragons retreating yet again. A chess match between these two teams, where the Fire Giant remains low. Gotta play safe.
It's going down quickly, and it gets taken down by the Jade Dragons. Up to the sky goes Netrioid, but the DOT from Sanford Soccer takes down the carry. Captain Twig alone in the back, and Hurrywind has turned his scope there. It's a double kill for Sanford Soccer, and Hurrywind's got one as well. The Camelot Kings, they stepped up, they turned this game around. But Miff, I'm not sure it's enough. Enhanced Fire Giant on all 5 of the Dragons. A big taunt in. It looks like the Jade Dragons are taking game 1.
But it wasn't nearly as easy as I would have expected, Dave, considering how dominant they'd been up until that last 5 or 6 minute stretch. The Camelot Kings, playing into a massive deficit for 30 uninterrupted minutes, were able to at least make the Jade Dragons sweat a little bit. Can't think that the Jade Dragons are going to be able to pull that exact same lead yet again. We might be looking at a similar situation as the last Dragon set in that it's a team that takes one-sided matches back-to-back, but not necessarily always in their favor.
I think if you're the Dragons and a Dragons fan, though, I think you got to be confident in the fact that in the first however many minutes of that game, we saw classic Dragons that were missing from 2/3 of the games against the Olympus Bolts. We saw early aggression, constant aggression, never letting the Kings get anything, invade. So I think there has to be some confidence, despite the slowdown, despite the little bit of intrigue. You gotta feel good in that, at least in the early game, you saw classic Dragons.
Yeah, I think that they really were playing with confidence here, and I think a lot of it has to do with this new selection out of the jungle from Sanford Soccer. This Circuit was putting in a lot of work in these late game and early game skirmishes.
Yeah, it looked different, but good from Sanford Soccer. The Jade Dragons will take game 1, not without some struggles, but they take game 1 nonetheless. Game number 2, right around the corner. Stick around.
The horsey, and horsey, don't you stop! Final kick! Final kick!
I gave up dabbing for a win.
Cool. No more dabbing for final call. He looked at me and said, I'm going to be on that stage next year. I'm going to become a world champion.
Ripping through! Titan down, ball 3! A double kill myself!
What a game to kick off our final week of Phase 2 regular season. The Jade Dragons, after about a half hour, able to come out and take down the Camelot Kings. If you want to show your support for any of these SPL teams, whether it be the Kings, the Dragons, or any team in the SPL, or you just want some general SPL merch, you can go to our title sponsor, Inside Apparel, at shop.smiteproleague.com and pick up anything that you may or may not want. Because, believe me, you're going to find something there that you didn't think that you wanted, and you go, yeah, that's kind of sick. There's onesies, there's shirts, there's hats, beanies, all things galore. Once again, at shop.smiteproleague.com if you want to buy any of the SPL merchandise. J-Mac Tucker and Taco joining me here and on the desk yet again for the breakdown of game number 1. And at first I thought it was just going to be, man, Dragons just ran it down the entire game. But then there was one little fight at the Phoenix, and it looked like a nice little shining hope there for the Kings.
Genetics was definitely putting in the work there with that Amir. So much game delay introduced because of how much he was able to actually control a decent bit of what the Dragons' initiation was looking like. And we saw some of that counter engagement potential coming out of Variety and Genetics alongside of, Captain Twig, Binman, Tinks, Nectaroid. They're all looking for the follow-up. But in the end, J-Mac, I think that this was really just a simple... I don't want to say it was an oversight by any means for the Camelot Kings, but I think they definitely had an idea in their heads of what they wanted to do with a specific draft and just didn't really have many tools left to actually try and recover because there was just so much counter drafting coming out of the Jade Dragons throughout that picks and bans. I don't think that this game 1 is a very good representative of what the Camelot Kings are actually capable of. I think that this was just a steep difference in two very... it was just a steep difference in the compositions. That's really all there is to be said.
Yeah, and I think that one play over in dual lane that was just highlighted from Panicat really exacerbated how far ahead the Dragons were going in this first one. Now, that was very early in the game. There wasn't a huge lead, but the fact that Panicat was able to 2v1 in his own lane against Netroid, against Captain Twig, didn't start off super hot for them. Also, when you're being dove at your back Harpy camp as a mid laner at level, what was that, minute 4 of the game, minute 3,
yeah,
4?
About.
That's never a fun time for Big Man Tings. He never was able to get his foot under him. He was never able to get the ball rolling just because from basically minute 1, he's being dove in his own jungle.
And again, that's kind of just what happens when you're trying to play Erlong Shen into Raijin and Serket. I think if it's one or the other, he's probably okay, and I think the Camelot Kings might have been able to get away with this, but both of them combined, that was just too much.
Yeah, a little too difficult to deal with for that team. We'll see if they make adjustments going towards Game 2. Raijin, I don't know. Is Raijin one of those gods that you kind of just have to throw in those top mage bands for the top 3 now?
It might be a necessity in this set, I think, because in Game 1, we saw Artemis, Giannis, and Odin as the initial top 3 bans from the Camelot Kings, and if they are in that first pick position again for Game number 2 picks and bans, I do believe that unless they intend on taking either Giannis or Raijin, they're going to have to possibly look at just banning them both. I think it's also just insane that the Jade Dragons were also able to scoop up that Umoja in the process. Kind of surprising that the Camelot Kings forfeited that for the Ymir.
We'll see what adjustments the Camelot Kings do make for the second game. Picks and bans are ready for you guys and ready for us to see what happens with it. I think the biggest oversight, as you mentioned, was the fact that Umoja not only didn't get banned, but got third picked by the Dragons. It was the last pick before going into the second round of bans. And the fact that Umoja made it that far through, and the fact that Genetics prioritized the Ymir over the Umoja, I think that may speak a little bit of the Kings here.
I think the Kings really had a lot of confidence in that Ymir, and for good reason. Genetics has looked great on him, and even in Game 1, he was almost the reason why the Camelot Kings were nearly able to delay long enough to reach that point of the game where their composition could actually thrive, but I think they just fell short of the mark there. Jade Dragons, on the other hand, there is a chance, I would say, that they wind up just banning the emoji here, not even wanting to take the risk of the Camelot Kings looking to prioritize an Ymir again over the M.
This Hell, I don't know. Hell has been recently rising back up. We talked a lot about it in game number 1 on the death segment, where Hell can be played mid or solo. You kind of have the pick of the litter between those two with it. But in that game, it just felt like the Hell, because they were lacking that front line, the Hell wasn't able to kind of pick up that slack. They fell behind very early by the point that they were actually team fighting with Variety. the Hell didn't have the damage online. There was already too many anti-heal options available for the Dragons. Do you think that Hell maybe loses a little bit of priority for Game 2?
Might prefer to see the Kings look for that Cerberus as opposed to the Hell, but I don't hate the Hell outright in solo. I just think that, again, for what the Kings wanted to draft, they just didn't really do themselves any favors in terms of not really taking into consideration what counter draft measures the Jade Dragons would be opting for. And I do like seeing the response of removing that Circuit, because like I just said, you can't have Raijin and Circuit combined, not with Sanford Soccer, not with Hurry Win. Those two are mechanically insane, and when you give them two golden apples to deal with, that's just not, it is not the place that you want to be. Twigs already had to live that nightmare in game number 1. That did not look like a fun time in the slightest for the Erlang Shen, but one more time, Emoja potentially looking to be left open here, because if I recall, it was a Gilgamesh prioritization here out of the Jade Dragons, but Camelot Kings, like I said, I would expect them to come back with a little bit of a vengeance here in Game 2.
Yeah, so far for the bans, they've swapped out the Artemis for a Circuit instead, because that was such a huge thorn in their side for Game 1. Dragons still have the option for their final ban. They've got the same ones going through, the Tiamat Osiris. Gilgamesh was their third ban last time, but I don't see a world where the Dragons can get Yemoja 2 games in a row as second pick. If they don't ban this here, I have to imagine the Kings are just going to snap lock it and take it away from Mike.
I would actually expect the Kings to put a little bit more emphasis into the Raijin first pick there for Big Man Tings, just because they would feel as though they could have just a strong, reliable burst damage mage in that mid-roll position. And it is going to be the Raijin first for the Camelot Kings. Yemoja still open here for the Jade Dragons. Rom as well, and I think with the way that Nectaroid has been playing, Rom has certainly looked like more of his favoritism preference as opposed to the Artemis.
I mean, there was one point where you look at his stat page on the website, and it was just Rom straight down the column for him. And it wasn't just like Rom and it was like a win every other time. It was like 5 out of the 6 recent ones were wins with that god, so you got to imagine that's where Netroid is putting a lot of favoritism for the hunter role. Artemis is still available, Izanami's still available as well, so there are a few other hunters that he could prioritize. But the Jade Dragons, they're immediately going to go ahead and get some of that front line out of the way early. Yemoja, after being left open for the second time, Mike will not risk letting it go to third pick this time with the Raijin locked in for the Kings. So Yemoja and Gilgamesh, who was banned away by the Kings Game 1, now locked in Game 2.
This might serve as a little bit of a deterrence factor, though, for Genetics wanting to take that Amir yet again. Could see prioritization more towards the Cerberus or the Terra. I think that counter-initiation measures are going to be the most impactful part here for the Camelot Kings, because Raijin, he can be great, but when there's all this lockdown from Yemoja's River's Rebuke and the Winds of Shamash, I do feel as though it is going to put a lot of stress on the Big Man Tanks in that mid-roll position. And again, thought that the Amir would not be the priority point here for the Kings, but seems as though Genetics just believes, hey, it's just because of that Raijin Circuit in the early game, WoW was never really able to do anything. Now that we've got the Raijin and Circuits off the board, a little bit more wiggle room here, and Kings, Rom, no surprises.
King is picking apart the damage dealers of the Jade Dragons. They banned the Circuit, as we highlighted much earlier on, but the Raijin taken away. They're going to grab their ROM one more time for Netroid, but it was banned away in the second round of bans in Game 1, but after so long of her being competitively banned, we're going to get to see our first Persephone game after her finally resurging and being allowed to be played here. How does this Persephone kind of shake things up now that she's back?
Persephone is ridiculous, and I will always stand by her
Yes,
being a ridiculous god, because she is one of the only gods in the game where you don't have to necessarily land your ultimate to prosper from it. You have to remember the AoE introduction that's going to be available here, and I think that with the likes of Yemoja and Gilgamesh Ultimates on top of that, there is so much lockdown potential for the Jade Dragons here. It's going to be tough, I think, for this Amir Rom, more so than the Raijin, because Raijin at least has the Thundercloud. He can dash away, no problem. But Amir and Rom, on the other hand, they're going to have a little bit more struggles, I would assume, J-Mac, and actually trying to escape this Persephone. And Also, one more time, Camelot Kings, they're going to invest bans towards that Artemis and the Izanami, but PandaCat, he just played OE in Game 1, and he has no issues running it back in number 2.
Yeah, he doesn't care about the fact that Artemis and Izanami and Rom are taken away. Oh no, they were banned from me Game 1, whatever will I do? I guess I'll just slam pick the OE again, why not? One interaction, I'm not 100% on this one, so I'll see if you know, if not, somebody will probably correct us at one point through. Can Persephone's ult stop at a Yemoja wall? Does your Yemoja's wall stop it if it's an ally, to where if you throw a River's Rebuke, you drop Persephone's ult in the middle of that, then it just becomes an inescapable death field? I'm not 100%, but that's a potential that I could see if it is a thing.
If it crashes into someone, I'm fairly confident that it'll stay locked in place. But that's inside of the River's Rebuke. I do believe that it'll actually travel through. It's not like Odin Cage, I want to say.
That's what
and it might actually stop depending on if the River's Rebuke is all the way through, because you have to remember before the walls fully are aligned. That's definitely a little bit more on the line there. It's not something that we really see that often, but...
I mean, when do we ever get to see both of these gods on the same team, or let alone both of these gods in a single game at this point? So maybe that's little micro things that could be really cool if they could pull it off. If you get a death field in the midst of the Yemoja River's Rebuke, it now becomes inescapable without purification beads, because you're going to have to need it because of the cripple that comes from Persephone's ultimate. Final picks that come through. Most interesting one out of all of those, Ratatoskr locked in for the Camelot Kings.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've seen the Ratatoskr, but I think that Captain Twig is just putting a lot of trust into that through the cosmos. Having that semi-global capability, I think, is going to introduce some nice countermeasures for the Camelot Kings. That's kind of what I was asking for. It's you want counter initiation against that Windsor Shamash and the River's Rebuke. Not only that, but now you have that Xingtian ultimate on top of it, so plenty of AoE presence, I think, from the Jade Dragons. But Ratatoskr, Rom, both gods that can just immediately focus out anybody from just about anywhere. That back line going to be a little bit more exposed. I think Hurrywin's really going to have to keep an eye out for himself here, because you could be anywhere on the map, but as long as you're within range, I do believe that Astral Barrage has a very similar range to Through the Cosmos as well. So it's not going to be an easy feat by any means to avoid a lot of that damage, and especially if Nectroid is having pinpoint accuracy off that Astral Barrage, that is a lot to deal with that Ratatoskr Through the Cosmos.
Which we know he does have quite a bit of accuracy with that ultimate. It's why he's been prioritizing it. It's one of those things with Rom. He's one of the only gods in the game where you have to say, if you're not willing to hit your ultimate, you need to swap to another god, because that's all he's only basic attacks without the ultimate. So if you're in the basic attacks, you got the first half, but the second half has got to be those ultimates. I would say 2 out of 3 on every shot would be a pretty nice bar to set for yourself if you are looking to be a ROM player as the future lines out for it. But with the drafts lining out here, Jade Dragons, they had a standout Game 1. Do you think they make a repeat in Game 2?
They could be riding a little bit of momentum now, but again, we'll have to really just wait and see what happens here, J-Mac.
Camelot Kings got to claw back if they want a chance to take it. Game 3, will they do it? We'll find out with Dulcin and Mifflin.
Jade Dragons were able to keep up the same pace that they did in Game 1. I'm hard-pressed to imagine a world where they don't roll over here in Game 2. The Camelot Kings, they put up a base defense, but it was not enough. In Game number 1, Dulcin, Miff, and Doug will be bringing you Game number 2. And the Jade Dragons, Miff, they bring out something a little bit new. Persephone available. Persephone locked in for Hurrywind.
Guess we got to break down what the new Persephone does, and to stop it all off, I will say I think this is actually second best slot mage. I think it's Tiamat, Persephone, and then right under her we got Morgan Le Fay. But new Persephone.
For Hurrywind or in general?
In general.
Got it.
Just power rank. Because we're doing Hurrywind, it's like Yanis,
right.
A major gap, and then anything else.
Has he not disproven that at this point?
No, I still think his Yanis is still his bar none best.
But a huge gap? Yeah. All right, we'll talk about Persephone. Doug's got it up. We're making the poor man wait.
Yeah, so here's the thing about Persephone. If you are a Persephone fan of the OG, she's actually simplified a good deal now since the minor rework. Her plant only has 2 levels. Either the first level, heal. Second level, it will travel forward when you proc it. Bone Rush applies a slow, has good damage on it, good cooldown. And
goodness.
Oh
yeah, my goodness.
Just dies. Just straight up dies.
Misses nothing. Netroid hit every single auto attack in that chain, and Mike had no chance. The perma slow from Genetics was enough. What a difference from Game 1. Mike was walking it down with PandaCat against, I think, the same exact lane last time, and what a difference. These 2 different games make already the Camelot Kings on board, and it's Netroid who gets the first kill. Great start, no Gilded Arrow, Leather Cal for Netroid to start off, but Miff, I'll hand it back over to you after the nice first blood that the Camelot Kings got, if you've got more to say about this Persephone.
Yeah, man, I don't know. Do I keep talking about it? All right, there's a good look at what the plants do when you proc it. It'll travel forward and bite enemies within that circular range. If you take one bite, subsequent bites will deal less damage. Also, the leap, kind of similar to Baba Yaga, explodes at her feet now. And that's it. That's all you need to know. Generally, the majority of it is still the same.
Fair enough.
Yeah, that's it.
Good. Thumbs up. And so if Hurdywind is able to play around the rest of his team as far as engage goes and damage goes, we should be expecting big things. Also, maybe start to consider banning out Persephone in your ranked games again. You got the free pass there for a little while because she wasn't available, and now, unfortunately, one of those ban slots likely going to get taken up yet again. So now we can talk a little bit, Myth, about that first blood. Camelot Kings just sort of walk at the Jade Dragons, and now the ability, right, for this Ymir and this Ram to finally have some presence. I think Netrioid got like 1 or 2 of his purple buffs there in game 1. Could look a little bit different here, especially if Captain Twig is around to help.
Sam for soccer, maybe trying to invade on this right-hand side. Variety, just going to let this one go. Fine, okay,
on the left.
Get 2 blue buffs. And on the left, you're right, big invade.
So on one side you lose a blue, on the other side the Camelot Kings might get a red and a purple if this purple buff invade goes well, and it sure does. So freeze on a PBM and then a Riptide, but nothing else on the end of it. And so I think, well, that's just a net win, you think, here for the Camelot Kings. 2 buffs to 1. Genetics, unfortunately, can't pick up the purple because he's got the red. And so actually, for a little bit longer here, Myth, this red buff could allow some extra pressure in the duo lane.
And that is a lot of extra pressure. Ymir already swings pretty hard in the early game thanks to the Frostbite passive, giving him percentage more damage from auto attacks once you proc one of your abilities onto just about anyone. And the Camelot Kings legitimately have a very kill-heavy lane. You push better because of Ram, able to auto attack every single minion with a singular auto attack, and Genetics with the aggression on Ymir should be able to match up. We didn't get to see it too much last game because generally it was PBM and PandaCat kind of just Jazzberry jamming the duo, but this time around, Camelot Kings in a much better position.
And what do we think here now? Because look, Captain Twig, remember early on in game 1, felt like it was a little bit of right side pressure, never really had a chance given how far ahead PandaCat was on the left side to put pressure over here. In fact, I remember PandaCat taking what looked like a 2v1 or a 3v1, getting a kill and then leaving anyway. Different look here for Captain Twig. There was kind of a gap in the middle of game 1 where it felt like that Erlang Shen didn't want to engage on anyone, right? I mean, with the nature of that kit and how you have to engage. Big different look for Captain Twig here on the Ratatosker.
It is. He's got global presence. He could go that Bruiser build still if he so chooses. It could also go for a full Assassin build, but I think that's a little bit less likely, as generally you want to get the as much value as you can as a frontliner from this god. You want to be able to dunk in and not die immediately, and it is the Thistleborn selection for Captain Twig early on. But already starting to fall behind insofar as farm. Sam for soccer takes the 5 and tries to take a fight.
Captain Twig level 4, but the Camelot Kings have 1 extra player on the right side of the map here. Blue buff is going to get dropped down for Variety. Cerberus thanks him for it. Always nice to have the blue buff in the solo lane, especially on the Cerberus here. Back to kind of standard in the solo lane this time, Myth. Double Guardians here, Final K on the Xing Chen, Variety on the Cerberus. This is a matchup that I think that we're starting to get a little bit more used to, and the Cerberus mainly, I think, has just become such a popular choice. I mean, the ability as the game goes on to not only engage, not only be tanky, but also do big damage numbers, I don't think can be understated.
Functionally, Xing Chen fills a lot of that same niche that Cerberus does. You're gonna be tanky, you're great at burning beads, you're a great backline disruption. I mean, Netrioid, if he wants to be that consistent source of auto attack damage, is gonna have to deal with Ferocious Roar, and that just strips away some of your damage, maybe. Makes it a little bit less enticing to go for that crit build, which is why you see him go for the cow immediately. Likely going to be a Silver Branch or Odysseus' bow in that next slot. Twig trying to set up for the Scorpion, but Sam's hovering.
Sam is close by, and he's got a 1-level lead. Double Stygian Torment, double stun. What a setup from the Camelot Kings. But the Jade Dragons have got enough damage to turn this one around. Sam for soccer could get dunked on. Will Captain Twig go back in? 1, 2 say yes,
Good
3
blink.
says no as Sam for soccer blinks on away. Now Big Man Tings rotates in. He's got the Taiko drums. You gotta hit him. He's hit 1, he's hit 2.
Variety.
But now Variety's gotta clean it up.
Uh-oh.
Kick from Sam. Wags his finger in Variety's face, and the Jade Dragons turn it around for a kill.
He went a little slow on the rotation, does spot out Genetics in the jungle, and Mike has got him locked down.
It's a great wall, but then Genetics has one of his own. Freeze onto Mike, and so Genetics likely able to walk away here. No more Grasp of Death from Hurrywin, some lockdown from PBM keeps things interesting. Dash on forward. This is going to be a slow, slow death for Genetics. Has to use the shell and the wall. And now I can say Genetics is going to get away.
Hurrywin not quite able to connect that last bone rush, but we got a good look at how hard it is to deal with Persephone's damage. Locking down entire jungle pass. It's constant damage. She's got great slow potential. She's going to keep you there inside of the team fight, and maybe Variety going to be kept here to watch the blue buff go down.
Variety leaps forward. We are still fighting on the right side of the map. Final K has used his ultimate here. Genetics.
Twig's back.
Still very low. Hurrywin gets locked down, and Captain Twig ends up getting the kill. Genetics low as well, so Final K is able to at least trade back one. It's an even trade on the right side of the map. We're looking at support on one side, mid on the other, and it could get worse here for the Jade Dragons.
Final K left high and dry and is going to fall down quickly. This time, Big Man Tings connects every single one of those Tycho drums. Jade Dragons stick around just a little bit too long after that engagement. That blue buff invade was optimistic at best, and the Camelot Kings aren't going to allow you to have that one so easily. Point of correction here, Dave. One more thing we got to talk about with Persephone. The passive. No longer you just firing abilities post-mortem. Now you can just kind of throw down some seeds, or more often than not, just kind of reset it immediately. You want to get that respawn up fast.
Sanford Soccer jumps onto Netrioid here. Goes up into the sky, sends some snipes Sanford Soccer's way, and buys time for Genetics to get on back from base. So Netrioid lives on, but now there's no ultimate from Netrioid. Maybe has Sanford Soccer sticking around, but Netrioid won't. He'll go back as he's down to half HP. A big difference, isn't it, from the Camelot Kings here in this game? Maybe an overstay from the Jade Dragons, but still it's a Raijin finding an early lead, but this time it's Big Man Tings on the Raijin, 2 levels over Hurrywin on this Persephone. And Captain Twig has finally converted some of that early pressure into early kills. 2 kills now on this Ratatosker. The stun, the ultimate, all of that feels like it's been playing a bigger role for the Kings.
And it is Captain Twig going for a much more assassin-esque build in the early. We see Sanford Soccer, Jotun's Wrath immediately into the Wing Blade so far. Captain Twig not electing to pick up any defense as of yet. And despite being 2-0, actually a level down on Sanford Soccer on this Gilgamesh pick. So the Jade Dragons find themselves with a pretty tanky front line already. Could open up the door to look at things like this Gold Fury, but as you highlighted, Hurrywin's pretty far behind already, and it's hard to deal with a Raijin with a lead, especially one that has an enhanced red buff on his belt.
Pendacat sees Netrioid, leaps on over. PBM just short on the ultimate. Netrioid has to use his beats, but you got to imagine there's no chance, and there isn't. Pendacat will grab the kill here in the dual lane, and that is just a sudden onslaught from the Jade Dragons. No real chance for Netrioid. Look, the ultimate's still coming back up from the last time Sanford Soccer was over there. And so the Jade Dragons find that small window. It's a real small target to hit because Netrioid's ult has just now come back up. But hit the target, the Jade Dragons do.
You know, I'd argue that we can call that a solo kill for Pendacat. I don't think Mike ever made contact with Netrioid. The cage really didn't lock him down either. So, Gore, if you're working on the stat sheet back there, put that one down as a solo. Pendacat finds Netrioid inside of the lane.
Are you tampering with the stat sheet?
I'm not tampering. I'm simply, I'm officiating.
Did PBM get an assist on that?
If you get an assist, that doesn't matter. He didn't help.
But he got an assist.
But he didn't help. All right, Dave, fine. Gore, go ahead and erase it.
That is tampering, Myth. We can't tamper with Gore's stat sheet.
All right, we'll let the chat decide. Chat, press 1 if that's a solo kill.
When is that a good
another number
that
if
a good
it
idea?
I don't know.
Actually,
they side with me.
Chat's been pretty good on predicting these matchups. I don't remember which way chat leaned here between the Jade Dragons and the Camelot Kings. I lean Dragons, by the way, so I'm feeling okay after game number 1. Game number 2, though, a bit of a different story. The Jade Dragons haven't been able to play as face forward, as run it down as they were in game 1. The lead, instead, actually over for the Camelot Kings, just about 1,000. 10 minutes in, we're looking at a much different line over in game number 1. And that's the type of response you want to see from the Camelot Kings. You go down big in game 1, let's show some face and get a lead here in game 2.
Yeah, it's really good to see that their mental is still in there, right? They fought a hard-fought battle for 30-some-odd minutes and now are still bringing pressure inside the early game. It is a Trigger Scorpion attempt here, but a great wall from Genetics isolates Mike. Stun, not good for Variety.
Mike gets a couple stunned on the back, though, and then there's the Grasp of Death onto Variety. The chain CC is nuts from the Jade Dragons, but Variety is able to leap away. A late set of beads is enough to save Variety's life. Thunder Crash away from Big Man Tings. There's a Ratatosker in the sky that has then made contact with the mid lane Harpy, so both teams able to get out of this one. Then you have to look at the actives. What did we burn here? Variety, of course, uses ult, his set of beads. PBM also used his set of beads, and then Final K Blink offline. So solo lanes both use their actives, and PBM uses his as well.
I think the difference there is that Hurrywin was sitting on a large sum of gold before he was able to make his way back to base. Finishes Karen's coin completely on that back, so maybe had he had that item, Variety wouldn't still be drawing breath right now. FinoK, on the other hand, finds himself surrounded and in a admittedly poor position.
FinoK has his ult, but unfortunately CC immunity won't save you from damage. Leaps on away. PBM throws
soon
up a wall on left, and that's Genetics who's trying to get back in to save or re-engage on the FinoK, unable to do so, and that's just a walk-it-down kill from the Camelot Kings. FinoK did not have the chance to get out, and Myth, now it's a killing spree for Captain Twig on this Ratatoskr. Brawler's Beat Stick has the first completed item after the Acorn. So the jungle feeling okay here for the Camelot Kings.
Quick beads from Netroid saves him from being stunned against the wall here, but does lose out on his tier 1 tower on the other side. I want to give a shout out to Genetics and Big Man Tings, actually acting as goaltender for that engagement on the Camelot Kings, able to intercept both Hurrywind and PBM on the rotation to peel out FinoK, and it makes the Kings come up ahead inside of that one. Gold Fury is available, and it is the Jade Dragons with Oracle Vision right now.
Doing it.
Kings, they're there.
Jade Dragons are close by as the Camelot Kings have started up the Gold Fury. Will Winds of Shamash get the last bit of damage? No, it won't. Not for the time being. SMITE jumps in, and the Camelot Kings secure the objective. Genetics with a late wall keeps himself alive on the side. The Jade Dragons find the first, and they find the second in this game, or in this kill as well. Captain Twig down. Genetics has also fallen. There's a trade-out kill from the Kings onto SMITE, and the Kings get the Gold Fury. So maybe a win here for the Order side.
I'd say so. They find themselves at a nice 2,000 gold lead already, so they can go ahead and try and push that elsewhere on the map. Desyncing the neutral objectives could be one opportunity for them. Pyromancer still available, so the Camelot Kings, having Variety with a nice little lead already, should have control on that side of the map. Opposite can be said of the duo, so they took the harder of the two objectives. It's actually Panda Cat, one level up, and already stripped away the tower of Netroid. So I'd say the Camelot Kings are very happy with how that one pans out. But for now, it is a expensive set of relics used, really, from the Camelot Kings here. I mean, beads down for Captain Twig, shell was used by Genetics, both defensive relics down for Netroid as well.
Yep.
Could be a little bit until we see them step up to this Pyro.
No, Netroid starts with the cowl this time, instead of the Gilded Arrow, back to standard, really, from what we've expected from this ROM. Icavale, Oboe, Silver Branch after that. And so we sort of know what that power spike looks like here.
It's good.
For the ROM as the game goes on. It is very good. Raijin, a similar build, though it's Big Man Tings this time. Still Chronos Pendant. In fact, both mid laners have gone Chronos Pendant.
Fast.
And then an early Ob Shard. Pyromancer started. My God, Captain Twig drop kicked against the wall and took way too much damage to really have a chance there. But now it's SMITE locked in the chain CC, and Big Man Tings will pick up the kill. It's a Thunder Crash away to keep his life going, but it's a double Whirlwind of Rage and Steel to send Genetics right back into the backline of the Jade Dragons, and now it's Polar Bear Mike being run down.
Panda Cat starting to work his way all the way around the fight, but might be too little too late. Polar Bear Mike falls down, but the Camelot Kings are deep in enemy territory.
Man, Netroid is swinging in this fight. This ROM has been untouched. Big Man Tings has to use the Aegis. Panda Cat has found a kill on the other side of this fight, but Netroid's got two as well, and it might just be both hunters swinging at one another by the time that this fight is over. And this one does settle. Looks like the Camelot Kings come out big, and they come out ahead in that one. Somehow 2 levels down again as Netroid. This lane has just not been easy, but still not without some impact there for the ROM.
No, great rotation for him to find a couple of kills, and 3-1-1 is not a bad slash line. It is, I agree, surprising that he finds himself at such a large deficit already. That's just the Panda Cat difference. That's what Breznov brings to a lane. It's a large lead for the Hou Yi as of right now. Had he had a little bit more mana, Panda Cat that is, I think that fight likely goes even further in favor of the Jade Dragons, but he was not allowed to use that jump aggressively to case out Genetics or anyone else because he just didn't have the mana to use it. Instead, goes for the scenic route and finds at least one kill on a Variety in the back.
Man, FinoK's got top player damage in this game, but the Xing Chen has just felt jump-onable. That's not a word at all, but I'm going to stick with it because I think it hits the mark pretty well here. Yeah, write it down. Somebody get it. It's also 2 words, so I don't know if you maybe throw a hyphen between the two. Maybe it works. Pyromancer taken by the Camelot Kings, but the right side of the map has just started to feel maybe awkward here for this Jade Dragons team. FinoK at 1-3 has been punished pretty often in these fights.
He has been. Hurrywin finds himself punished as well. Dropped down to 50%.
Ratatoskr.
Kings, they want this.
Where does Captain Twig go? Not into the back line is the answer. Tier 1 tower takes a lot of damage. Netroid left alone thanks to the Riptide of PBM. It's a jump in from Panda Cat and a slow, but beads get used by Netroid here. Variety has to leap away over the Riptide of Polar Bear Mike. And it's not only no Tier 1 going down in mid, it's a complete reversal of the pressure. Now the Jade Dragons work their own way in, and they will get the Tier 1 tower of the Camelot Kings.
Now where they're going to go afterward, Gold Fury and Pyromancer dead, no Tier 1 on left, might just be we see them fizzle out, trying to collect as much farm in the jungle as they can and go for the reset. And Hurrywin, despite playing from a deficit this entire match, is still putting out a ton of damage inside of these small little skirmishes, man. I mean, it's just nearly impossible to dodge out all the damage that Persephone's throwing out. She controls entire lanes with her flowers now.
So where do you fight against her?
You probably want to fight like right on top of her. You want to shut her down quickly.
Right.
Beforehand, I'd argue that it is almost a misplay to dive to Persephone first before rework because, oh, she's dead. Now she's intangible and still killing me. Not the case anymore. If you shut her down early on, she can plant some plants around you, but that's about it.
So Hurrywin then becomes the target here. Not often you see, although we're 17, 18 minutes into the game, I was going to say not often you see middle laners topping the damage charts at this point, but it's probably an incorrect statement. Though, player damage top for Hurrywin has been there for a little while, so this Persephone absolutely has been hitting its mark here. Bit of a difference then in the mid lane build. Still both Chronos Pendant, Charon's Coin, and Soul Reaver for Hurrywin. That a bit more standard. And then Divine Ruin and Ob Shard, so some percent pen early for this Raijin. Worked against the Kings in Game 1, so why not pick that up for ourselves here in Game 2? And so then, you know, I think it's a similar story here, Miff, where we're talking about how are you going to kill off Hurrywin on Raijin in Game 1. I think you could just flip that script immediately. How are you going to jump on this Raijin for the Camelot Kings? Because up to this point, 203, a lot of damage online.
The Camelot Kings have a couple of targets, though, that are pretty valuable and some pretty easy to go for. Captain Twig stands out to me as an incredibly squishy initiator, goes for the full assassin build so far. We've got Brawler Speed Stick, immediately into a Crusher, and then a Katana. Could be maybe Serrated Edge, maybe Stone Cutting, something along those lines. But either way, it's movement speed, good utility, but it's not defense, which means if Captain Twig is using that ultimate to initiate a fight, all Jade Dragons have to do is drop the Grasp of Death from Hurrywin on a wall wherever you think Captain Twig is going to land. He's rooted, and then he gets immediately blown up. Or you just save it and hit him with it directly, and it probably does about 40% of his HP bar at this point. Twig has put himself in a position where he has to play nearly perfectly if he wants to get the full value from his kit. And it's not just him. You could also jump onto Genetics, who is not entirely tanky at this point, as he has gone for the Pridwin pretty early on. There's some decent targets for the Dragons to jump on.
Maybe see what those targets are. Right now, it's Variety that gets jumped on by Sam for Soccer. The dropkick barely nicks that wall. That keeps Variety stunned just for a second. And then the Jade Dragons are able to kind of back away here. Variety not dissuaded, though, from maybe finding a jump in around the backside of the Jade Dragons here. Both carries in between the support and the solo laner, while Sam for Soccer rotates mid. Bit of an awkward positioned fight for the Camelot Kings, so they're going to go back and reset themselves here. The good news is, kind of regardless of where these carries position themselves with that assassin build, while it does make them squishy, Captain Twig absolutely has the ability to jump on Hurrywin in a more immediate way than what we saw with the Erlang Shen there in Game 1.
Yeah, Twig's got great 1v1 potential against just about anybody at this point in the game. I mean, I don't want to step up to him, and I don't think Sam for Soccer does either.
Does he take it? Is he happy with a trade where Twig jumps in, kills Hurrywin, but dies in exchange?
100%, yes.
Yeah.
If that Persephone is dead, you have done your job as this Ratatasker, and that could be the goal for him, as it is a very front-facing composition from the Jade Dragons. I mean, fine, okay, Sam for Soccer, even Panda Cat, at times even jumping in aggressively. That kind of leaves Hurrywin alone in the back line. That could be the strategy that Captain Twig is looking for here, and already Twig splitting up the map, trying to push down mid. Jade Dragons forced responds. Maybe they try and take this fight now.
Ooh, nice wall from Genetics. Slows down the Riptide engage. You just got this sense of impending danger once the Riptides from the Jade Dragons were taken. And then Genetics reads it and backs his team away. I'd argue similar impact from the junglers up to this point. KDA is looking pretty similar. A little bit more damage for Sam for Soccer, though. So the lockdown and the damage are going to be important. Captain Twig is on the right-hand side of the map. So it looks like Tier 2 tower being exchanged for the Fury at this point. And it's a pretty obvious trade here. The Camelot Kings don't step up. They don't try to contest. We'll just leave Captain Twig to split push.
They've exposed the Phoenix now, have the Camelot Kings, so they've exposed a win condition in that same zone. I think that's a great trade for the Kings. As long as the Dragons, A, don't kill Twig, and B, don't get a Fire Giant in the near future, I think that's a great trade.
Yep. Some pressure from Genetics and Variety will send Panda Cat back to mid, otherwise there actually might have been a jump onto the Dragons Hunter there. And they get a Pyromancer on the back end, Miff, so that I think further tilts the scales for the Camelot Kings here. And so you got to be looking towards FG. If you get the FG, then you can walk down that exposed Phoenix here at some point in the game for the Camelot Kings. And so much more comfortable. Now, you know, we talked to 10 minutes about how it was a 2,000 gold lead. Slowly that's built up. You're at about a 4,000 gold lead for the Camelot Kings at this point. Surprising then, although maybe not surprising, you're one person down in that fight, that there wasn't really pushback around that Phoenix, but maybe that's just a call. Let's not roll the dice. Let's not take a risky fight. We've got a big lead. We know that we're going to get these advantages on the right. And we'll let the game build up that way. But now we're starting to see the Fire Giant work itself into the conversation. Got to see a fight with from the Kings with the lead that they've got.
Yeah, they have not really dug in their heels and tried to force a 5-on-5 engagement. Fire Giant is essentially one of the only objectives on the map that you have to defend, especially with the deficit being as small as it is. 4,000 gold, certainly not a paltry sum, but it is something that the Jade Dragons can fight into, to be sure. Fire Giant, on the other hand, 4,000 gold and Fire Giant together is pretty large. That's pretty hard to deal with, and with as many towers as the Dragons still have standing, I think that it is a very fair bet that we see them try and defend this Fire Giant, if it is the Kings, aggressing onto it. Worth noting, Hurrywin does head back to base and pick himself up a pretty significant power spike. Soul Gem purchased in whole, so he's going to have a lot more power. He's going to have good sustain, and he should be around to stick in these engagements a little bit longer. I think it's all up to Captain Twig, as you highlighted earlier, to shut down this Persephone in the back line, or just leave it up to Genetics. I mean, he's like a magician. He keeps pulling out these phenomenal walls from his hat. You can rely on that, I guess.
Must be a big hat.
Yeah, isolate people.
You're pulling a wall out of the hat? That is a big hat.
You're proud of that.
That's a 10-gallon hat at least.
At least a 10-gallon hat.
At minimum 10 gallons.
All right, you stumbled on the initial, but you flourished in the end there. That was a great joke.
I appreciate it, Miff. Thank you. Look, anytime I can break Miff, it's a rare occurrence, but I'm happy to do it every once in a while. The Camelot Kings still playing with an advantage in the solo lane. A level down now is fine. Okay, it was 2 levels just a moment ago. So you're going to have to see more out of the Xing Chen if you're going to have an advantage, or you're going to have a fighting chance if you're the Jade Dragons around this Fire Giant that the Kings had started up, but they drop. Genetics separates out this fight. A freeze onto Mike, who has to use the beads. Sun's breaking down onto the Ymir. Variety alone in the backline. Stygian Torment sends Mike right back into what would have been the awaiting arms of the Camelot Kings, but nobody's in range to deal the damage. Everyone from the Kings has been pushed back, but big man Tings with a little bit of that delayed damage, able to get a kill onto Sam.
Twig dunks down onto both carries of the Jade Dragons and walks away with 100% HP. Absolutely crazy. Take a peek at these relics, Dave. I don't think the Dragons can stick around much longer. It's just Sam that still has his, and it's just Sam that's dead.
And look at how in sync, I'll pause on that, as the leap away from Fino-K keeps things interesting here. Slightly low on the health bars, Genetics and Netroid and Variety, so no immediate FG pull, despite Sam for Soccer being dead for 20 seconds. More sustained for the Jade Dragons here. Yeah, the in-sync Aegis plus slightly delayed beads for both Hurrywind and Panda Cat, I think kind of tell the story there, and that's the immediate engage for Captain Twig, and that's the threat that we've been building up and expecting to see for this entire game, and it absolutely came to fruition there. Was a little bit delayed, though. The front line, or the back line, rather, from the Camelot Kings had to kind of back away, so it didn't immediately connect with that damage. Luckily, Tycho Drums is a pretty far-range ability, so Big Man Tings was able to make that one stick. So now it's a reset from both of these teams, but given the active situation for the next minute and a half plus even, maybe a minute and 40 seconds, the Camelot Kings are going to have a big advantage, especially once Twig's ult comes back up. This time, if that dive comes in, it's really going to stick.
Yeah, the Kings somehow maintain just about every single relic, barring Genetics' relics, inside of that engagement. So every single one of them still has engage and defensive capabilities inside of this fight. Jade Dragons, I think, can still try and steal, but I don't think it comes down to an actual 5-on-5 engagement. It's a steal attempt. This kind of, okay, well maybe, all right, no, that's it. They've done it. They can defend now.
Yeah, that's actually very important that Captain Twig has used the ultimate here. If he had found a moment to engage there, maybe things get interesting, but now that big Ratatoskr ultimate off the table, and that's important to look at. Neither of these teams shied away from a lengthy FG dance, Myth, in game number 1. Not as wide a gap, though, as any of those Fire Giant fights were. The Camelot Kings are in the lead, but it's not nearly as big a lead as the Jade Dragons had in Game 1. So really the difference then becomes the actives, the ultimates, things like that. It's an immediate start here from the Camelot Kings. The Jade Dragons responding from the mid lane. Big Man Kings has got Final K in mid. This one going down slowly. Are you going to have to pull off? If you're the Camelot Kings, the answer is yes, but Final K is around the backside. Can he leap in safely? No, he cannot. So the Camelot Kings back away.
Grasp of Death used from so far away does connect with 3, but is immediately removed from the map, and well, the rest of the Dragons weren't in range to follow up off of it. Hurryman now going to be playing without his ultimate for a couple of moments here, but Fire Giant successfully defended by the Jade Dragons, and that was a great call from the Kings. They saw the Dragons cross through mid, trying to get to that Primal Fury, and immediately they generate enough threat to pull the Dragons away, and well, they are able to at least disengage safely as well. Take a peek at Captain Twig, though, might have his work cut out for him in a 1v1.
Does have Mannequin's Hidden Blade, and that is a lot of damage that connects onto Sam for Soccer. 1v1 in the mid, Captain Twig washes his hands of Sam for Soccer. So now the Camelot Kings have a bit of an advantage on the map immediately, but they're not going to push it. The Jade Dragons, or the Camelot Kings, excuse me, able to at least take the Pyromancer. Maybe you can go back, buy up, and then go to the FG, but we'll have to see. It's just a bit delayed, and it looks like that's the call.
Cloak of Concentration picked up by Captain Twig means that Sam for Soccer, had that been an opportunity for him to take the 1v1, could have been one of the last opportunities for him to take a 1v1. Twig now a little bit tankier, and Variety picks up a power potion as well. Seems like the Camelot Kings are announcing this next team fight is likely the last one, and Fire Giant should go their way. Jade Dragons nowhere in range to defend. Primal Fury seems to be the answer, and a little bit of gold will help out, but against Fire Giant, when you're already playing at a deficit, about 5,000, approaching 6,000 for the Camelot Kings, with 3 towers still standing for the Jade Dragons as well, this lead is going to balloon even further out of control. I'm not certain that we see the Kings attempt a Phoenix Siege, barring they find a pick or something along those lines that empower them, give them the confidence they need to step into these Phoenixes. Instead, I think it's these 2 tier 2 towers, that tier 1, back to base, and maybe, if they still have time remaining, regroup and try and go for a Phoenix after that.
What an absolute difference in control for the Camelot Kings in this game. Effectively no footing in Game 1 until the Phoenix Siege was stifled against the Jade Dragons. Seems like from minute 1 here, this Ratatosker has made a massive difference, and again, it's a Raijin who's benefiting from some early fights around him, and Big Man Kings got off to a decent lead, had some early damage. I think Captain Twig's got to be the story of this game, though. You win the 1v1 against Sam for Soccer in mid, you're able to give your team that FG effectively for free, minus the Primal Fury going down, and it's hard to find an answer for it. We've talked about who are all the targets for Captain Twig, and you've already mentioned, look, if he jumps in and dies, but he can take one with him, he's going to be just fine. You saw how much damage he was able to do for against Sam for Soccer. Imagine what a carry's health bar is going to look like uncontested there for a moment with Captain Twig. The Jade Dragons elect not to defend either of their tier 2 towers. So with 2.5 minutes left on this FG, we're going to be sieging.
And then it looks like the siege could come through quickly. It's a 3-2 split. Captain Twig and Variety headed up the mid. Maybe Twig has the ability to rotate between either fight with that semi-global ultimate. But it is going to be a slow siege here from the Camelot Kings. It's all about Netruid and whether or not he's able to close gap, and they've got good space creation tools, be it Big Man Kings with the Tycho Drums, or a Stygian Torment, or just a good wall from Genetics, but Jade Dragons, with Hurry Win on this Persephone, can create so much space and control the entire lane.
You did say something about a good wall, and Genetics at least got one, but the Riptide from PBM keeps Genetics right where he is, the individual target inside that wall, and Final K finally picks up the kill. That was set up by his support there. Variety locked against the wall as well. He has to leap away, but a lot of damage following up there from Hurrywind.
These plants are so nuts,
one kill from the Jade Dragons might be enough, Myth, to send this Fire Giant push right back.
The defense from Persephone is bar none the best of any mage in the game. I've seen it now, and it's crazy. He just sent out 4 little flowers to walk down the lane, and they're just chomping at heels, man. And no one from the Camelot Kings can, A, do anything about it. You're not destroying her plants. Instead, you're playing Frogger when you're playing against Persephone. You just have to dodge it out, and it's incredibly hard to do because it opens you up to take damage from other abilities. And it's not like Hurrywind doesn't have the ability to set up for his own plants. Bone Rush applies a slow. We saw that Grasp of Death essentially locks down the entire Phoenix. It is so hard to siege against this god, and that's why I thought we'd see the Camelot Kings go back to base before attempting that siege. Instead, I think they saw how quickly they were able to strip those tier 2 towers and wanted to keep up that power play. They realized it's a pretty low opportunity cost, even if they do have somebody die, and Genetics does die. There's not much the Jade Dragons could do on the tail end of that.
Nope.
But I don't know, man. Somebody's going to have to deal with Hurrywind. I think it has to be either Captain Twig or miraculously Netroid with an ultimate can send it back to base. But his damage is so nuts.
Maybe a blink forward from Variety. Get something done here. The stun onto Variety, but then it's a follow-up from Captain Twig, but he's in the base of the Jade Dragons. He's all alone. And Panicat throws up in his hands and says, all right, I'll take that kill for free. And now the Jade Dragons have a 4v5 on the map. A wall from Genetics is going to slow down the re-engage, but a whirlwind of Rage and Steel sends Genetics right towards the back line. Final K takes a lot of damage from BMT. Can Genetics survive? No, he can't. Panicat's got the last auto.
Sanford Soccer on the right-hand side trying to loop his way around. Finds Variety, so the rest of the Dragons can close gap. Could be another pick.
And without Captain Twig, the engage, that backline dive a bit missing. He got a massive ultimate, Captain Twig did.
But
like
everyone
else from the Camelot Kings was just outside of the base. There was no chance to re-engage, to follow up on something like that. Something about these Phoenix Sieges in this set here, Myth, are going to keep us on our toes all game long. Still a big lead for the Camelot Kings in the gold department. But just like in game 1, just the teams are flipped. Should be some intrigue here around this next FG.
If there were just one more teammate there for the Camelot Kings, Twig's ult would have been category 5 level disaster.
Right, think about a Tycho drums going into that.
It would have been, I mean, look at the beads. All the beads were down for the Jade Dragons, so everyone got knocked up. The damage was just not quite there, and legitimately, Twig drops a little bit of an into towards the tail end of this one. But again, it's all about opportunity cost, and what are the Jade Dragons able to do finding those picks? Nothing on the map. It's still the Camelot Kings in control. It's still them picking up the Pyro and establishing vision advantage on the Fire Giant itself. Oni Fury going to be respawning very soon, so we'll see how they decide to play that one. Keep your eyes on Twig, though. I don't know. I'm not quite certain what he's doing on the map. Maybe trying to generate some sort of split push, but the Jade Dragons are not so far removed from this game that they won't take a 5 versus 4 once he shows himself.
And I think under that Phoenix, we saw a pretty important note there, and that's how the Jade Dragons can sort of counter-engage this fight. And it was a jump in from the Camelot Kings, immediately walled off by the River's Rebuke. There was a Riptide there to send the re-engaging members of the Kings the opposite direction. So the ability to kind of isolate that target was there from the Jade Dragons. It's just finding that on a consistent enough basis. If we can delay the dive in, get that kill, and then deal with the rest of the Camelot Kings, that's a route back into this game for the Jade Dragons. Left side wave pushed up by Captain Twig, so that could make things interesting around this left side Phoenix. Jade Dragons not going to bite on that bait, though. We already saw what happened, Sanford Soccer versus Captain Twig last time. Could we get round 2 already? The boxing match between these two rescheduled, but Captain Twig's got something else in mind.
Yeah, Twig, I think maybe not going to win the 1v1 now that Sanford Soccer has closed up the build gap. But
I want it.
Yeah, especially with an Oni Fury acting as that unofficial second there for Sanford Soccer. So Twig, just trying to generate threat on the map, does drag the Jade Dragons away from the Fire Giant pit and creates a situation where Big Man Tinks is able to walk in and clear out some of these wards. Notably, that Brace of Replenishment is removed, but only for another 10 seconds. You actually get 20 seconds off your cooldown every time it gets destroyed by an enemy god, so PBM not feeling too bad about it.
A little bit of damage from the Jade Dragons onto the enhanced Fire Giant. Will they commit, though? No Frenzy for Mike this time to give us that cue that the Jade Dragons want to fight. Instead, a lot of damage finds the backline. But look at the backline of the Camelot Kings. It is missing. Sanford Soccer's got the first. Up into the sky goes Netroid. Could be a death on his way back down as Pandacat rampages through this team fight. Will finally get taken down by Captain Twig. Netroid left on as well. Sanford Soccer's got the double himself. It's a tale of 2 fights, but it's the tale of 1 win here for the Jade Dragons. The Camelot Kings try to engage, but the Jade Dragons punch him in the mouth.
Twig able to blink his way out of there, should be able to walk away with his life. Variety, not nearly as lucky, has 3 dragons on his tail, is able to use that leap away, and no Omi for PBM could spell the end of this one. And Twig going for a bit of a classic Shing play, trying to keep something up on the map.
My
Variety,
God.
Well, he's still alive.
That was a sad fight to be a carry, wasn't it? Variety is going to get dove on here, and Sanford Soccer gets 3 in that fight. Now a bit delayed is that final respawn timer. 1 minute on Variety. Everyone else in the game, 30 seconds or less. Captain Twig still here, not able to stop the back. Every single carry in that fight died. Hurrywind and Panicat both go down. So do Big Man Tings, who has both of his actives, by the way, and Netroid. They both also fall. It was kind of 2 dives on either side where it felt like both teams kind of abandoned their carries to go down. And ultimately, it's the Jade Dragons, maybe, Miff, who are feeling a little bit more comfortable after that fight.
Yeah, the Camelot Kings, I think, were putting a lot of faith in Shell and the Phantom from Genetics there. I mean, the Shell initially keeps your carries alive for a good bit of time, and then the Phantom afterward with some damage mitigation on top of it as well. Everyone survived. The Kings a little bit longer than I think the Jade Dragons were really accounting for. But at the end of the day, Variety's desync death really only nets the Jade Dragons the Oni Fury, which will generate some threat on the map and separate these engagements. Could be that the Camelot Kings are forced to go deal with those waves while the Fire Giant is still out there. And it is an enhanced Fire Giant 36 minutes into this game, so whichever team picks this up is going to be primed and ready to look at ending the match, truthfully. I mean, both teams have incredibly strong siege.
Round 2? Nope. I don't think it's going to happen.
You want it so bad.
I want it so bad. It's so much fun.
Oh, here it comes. Whoa.
Could be. Right here, right now. Right? Nope, not going to happen. Does have Blink. So Captain Twig does, but it's not up for the next 15 seconds. Sanford Soccer's really turned his game around, I think. There was a great start for this Gilgamesh, a real lull in the middle of that game, and has since, I think, found that comfort zone, really putting pressure on Big Man Tings and Netroid in that previous fight, but I think you got to say the same things about this Ratatoskr for Captain Twig. Both junglers, I think, hitting their mark as far as who we want to engage on. Got to be careful here, Variety. There's a lot of lockdown that the Jade Dragons have, and one death here probably spells an enhanced Fire Giant for the opposing team.
Dude, Hurrywin is starting to bother me with these plants, man. Genetics is just
Could
walking
be anyone,
around.
right? But it's just the fact that Hurrywin's playing Persephone, right?
Persephone's starting to bother me, Dave, with these plants, man. Genetics is trying his best to generate as much space as possible and loses out on 30% of his HP to some plants that he can't even fight back against. It's just a tough situation to fight into it. And that once the Jade Dragons establish defensive positioning, once they're able to lay down all their roots, if you would, to slay down these plants,
nice.
It's so hard to fight back in. Look at that! What are you going to do? You're not walking past that.
No, you got to walk away. Like that, you got to back off, which is not what you want to do if you're Variety. Top damage in the game is Hurrywin on this Persephone.
And it's not close.
And it's not really all that close. 4,000, 4,500 over the next highest person, and it's FineOK who's the next highest person. And then Panda Cat is almost tied for third. All of the top damage in this game is suddenly swung towards the Jade Dragons, right? In Variety, at the beginning of this game, and he still has a good KDA at 0-3 and 9. At the beginning of this game was kind of jumping in scot-free. Remember how long ago we were talking about the level lead that was over there in the solo lane? It's felt a little bit different, hasn't it, in these last couple of fights where Variety jumps in. Kind of feels like Serb is just getting blown up.
Genetics almost able to find PBM inside of that one, but the wall not quite good enough. Riptide buys him a little bit of space, and I agree, man. Variety has reached the point of this game where he is likely the tankiest person on the map, barring maybe FineOK, but doesn't feel like it, does it? At any misstep could cost him his life.
Genetics as well. Watch out for the stun from Panda Cat, or the root from FineOK, or the stun from Polar Bear Mike. Variety has used his ultimate here. Watch out. Up in the sky is Captain Twig. Big Man Tings dashes on away, uses the Phantom here. Is there a re-engage from Captain Twig? No, there is not, as the Jade Dragons have won that initial engagement, pushing the Camelot Kings back.
Stygian Torment and Captain Twig's ultimate used in exchange for Grasp of Death and PBM's ultimate. So both team fight tools lost
Awkward
from
for Twig.
both teams, but it's Hurrywin with the defensive positioning, and we've talked about these plants, man. They're just going to keep traveling.
It is awkward for Captain Twig now. You don't have, through the Cosmos, to find the backline in this fight. Fire Giant started and
they got it
by the Jade Dragons. Twig is in the backline, but he's jumped on now by Panda Cat. Oh, Sam is taking a whole lot of damage. He walks back in, and Big Man Tings deals the last tick of damage with the Taiko drums. Now it's a re-engage, and look at all the slows from the Raiju. Genetics throws up the wall, but he pays for it with his life. Variety is re-engaged in this fight as well. It's a 1-for-1 trade, but the Dragons have the FG.
It's Variety jumping in yet again, finds Hurrywin with the stun, but nobody there to follow up. Autos to the wall.
He has ult. Stygian Torment's got to, and it sent him right back to the rest of the Camelot Kings. BMT's got a double. BMT won't get the triple. Instead, the Kings get the deicide. And Miff, I think they're sending us to game 3.
Hope you're happy with your Fire Giant Dragons, because you won't get a chance to use it. 30 seconds on the nearest respawn, and Netroid still draws breath. This Phoenix is a foregone conclusion, and I agree, Dave. I think the Titan is as well.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to have any problem finishing this game in the next 20 seconds. The Jade Dragons mocked in the final team fight of the game. This one, a long, drawn-out effort by the Camelot Kings. Real difference here, Miff? Neither team, notably the Jade Dragons, don't get off to like a 6,000 gold lead in the first 10 minutes. We're long, we're drawn out. It was not a clean finish by any means, but the Camelot Kings had their feet underneath them for effectively the entire game.
Yeah, that was such a crazy match. I think Captain Twig comes out in a huge way. That might be one of the best performances we've seen from him all year on this Ratatasker. That solo kill on Sam for Soccer at around the 30-minute mark was a huge moment for this team. Really shifts up the pace of that one. But throughout the entirety of it, the Camelot Kings were in control. I'd say the Jade Dragons do an admirable job fighting into a very large deficit.
Well, look, what other way do we start off this weekend, the last weekend in Phase 2 of the SPL before the Phase 2 playoffs? What a better way to start it off than a Game 3 between the Jade Dragons and the Camelot Kings. You don't want to miss it. Stick around. Game 3 is up next.
Cthulhu's. Start your morning madness with a bowl of morning happiness.
Cthulhu sale is ongoing now. You will take part. Save up to 33% off gem bundles. You will take part.
Crazy crispity, crazy crunchity, crazy crunch.
Select chests up to 50% off. You will take part. Boosters, avatars, wards, and more up to 50% off. You will take part. Party up with up to 3 times favor. Worshippers and XP. You will take part. This is your duty.
Crazy Cthulhu-y. Cthulhu. Surgeon General's warning, Cthulhu's are not of this world and should not be ingested by children or adults over the age of 80. Gems are not included as a prize because Cthulhu's are not real. Reality is meaningless, time is a construct. They not all hope when you ingest Cthulhu's. Use as directed, part of balanced breakfast. For the crispity, crunchity, crazy crunch, get cuckoo with Cthulhu.
You will take part.
Of a balanced breakfast.
Can we take a commercial break?
Oh, and welcome back to the exciting set of the Jade Dragons and the Camelot Kings. I feel sorry if you've missed any of the action up until now, but at least you're tuning in for this part. But before we get into the breakdown of Game 2 and get ready for Game 3, we got a gem sale going on around here, as you saw by the lovely commercial of the Cthulhu's. If you haven't bought your gems yet, you still have until September 6th to get them at potentially up to 33% off and start making your way to get that lovely Cthulhu skin. I know I already have it in game. It is a really crazy skin. It's a lot of fun to play, and if that's not the skin that you want, there's some other ones, well, now's your chance to get some gems, so you can go ahead and pick those up. J Mac Tucker joined me one more time for this breakdown. Taco here, and Camelot Kings, they started off as nice and slow pace pretty much for the entirety of the game. A little bit of breakout here, breakout there, but that last team fight out of the Camelot Kings, very calculated for them.
I think we were just seeing a never-ending battle between these two teams in terms of the fact that both backlines were just nonstop, being constantly dove, and I think that Captain Twig, especially on this Ratatosker, was able to accomplish exactly what the Camelot Kings were intending to do with this rat, and that was simply just to make sure that Hurrywin, Panicat never really got a chance to just get those free cast moments off. The team fight from the Jade Dragons, I think, just too impacted by that forced split that the Camelot Kings kept repeating time and time again. And yes, we saw some instances, I think, where Sam, Fino, or Sam and Polar Bear were able to kind of try and turn things around, but by then the damage had already been done. Once you lose your carries, it's very hard to collect anything after the fact, even if you survive the fight.
And Big Man Ting's putting some big damage out with this Raijin. You know, we kind of teased a lot about it in previous sets. We teased a lot about it in even just this set and game before, but I think we're getting to the point where Raijin might need to start being a top ban, because both of these mid laners have shown that they are very prominent with this pick. They've shown that they can output an insane amount of damage. Big Man Ting's going 7-1 this game for the Raijin. I think it might be time that we start talking about Raijin being a top 3 ban.
Raijin could potentially be a top 3 ban. It really just depends on what teams you are looking at. But with a set between mid laners like Hurrywin and Big Man Tings, Raijin definitely looking like the difference makers so far. I mean, Jade Dragons, they had a lot of control with Raijin in Game 1. Camelot Kings had the same effect in Game number 2. And now that we're really down to the wire here, J-Mac, in Game number 3, I would imagine that if Jade Dragons are not in that first pick position, then they might find themselves actually looking to take that one out.
Yeah, we saw Game 1, Raijin picked by the Dragons, and Dragons won. Game 2, Raijin picked by Camelot Kings, and Raijin has won. Maybe we'll see if the same story follows suit in Game 3. But the damage output that they were able to have, the amount of safety that both of these mid laners have had with this pick, it just kind of further warrants my thoughts of Raijin is 100% a top priority for both of these mid laners. He's probably even ban worthy at this point. I think either of these teams, if they're second pick, that's got to be something in their talking point.
I think what made Raijin all the better, though, was looking at some of the assets that were surrounding him. In game number 1, I think that Sam on that circuit was a big difference maker. Genetics with the Amir as well. In game number 2, I think had a little bit more chances to flourish. So as far as the drafting is concerned, J-Mac would imagine that maybe the Dragons are looking to take away that Amir from Genetics.
Maybe get something a little bit more aggressive. They can be able to try and fight them and take away some of the safety nets. We jump into picks and bans for game number 3. Maybe the first of many game 3s we'll see this weekend with some of the action-packed sets that we have available. The Jade Dragons, they've been second pick this entire time. Now they're going to be the ones who want that first pick option.
and they're still going to be looking to take away this Osiris. And I think that this is actually an incredibly strong ban option for the Dragons, just because of the fact that they're against Camelot Kings. So much flexibility, I think, with that Osiris, and the fact that Twig has looked incredibly strong whenever he's had a chance to actually utilize some of that early game scaling that warrior jungles tend to provide. Odin as well, though, not going to have a chance to shine here today, but neither will Yemoja. Camelot Kings noticing that Yem just a little bit too problematic, and Jade Dragons having banned away that Amir now. Curious to see if they choose to try and either first pick a Ryzen or Giannis for themselves. Have to remember the Camelot Kings have been banning away that Giannis in games 1 and 2, but in second pick position, they might opt to leave it open. That way they can get either or.
Yeah, that's going to be the big one, is which one is more prioritized for the Jade Dragons. Is it the Giannis or is it the Ryzen? Well, maybe we'll find out here as Serket is the final ban for the Kings. Still a little bit scarred from that game 1 thrashing that Sanford Soccer and co. were able to put towards the Kings. So they banned that one away, along with, as mentioned, the Yemoja Tiamat, still the standard ban for it. Osiris and Odin, same from the previous games, but Ymir added to the mix with it just because, well, both supports were doing really well, both of those games for it, so they're going to make sure to put both of them on something brand new. The Jade Dragons have a big decision to make of what they want to grab in this first slot.
I was curious if they were going to opt for a front line as opposed to just looking for one of the mid lane choices, because again, with both still being open, I think that the Jade Dragons are just putting a little bit more priority into trying to get a composition going that could be complemented by either, and I think that front line is a little bit more impactful between these two teams, because so far that has been the real game changer, at least from my takeaways of watching these games or these teams in both games 1 and 2, because mid laners are fantastic, don't get me wrong, mages can be incredibly strong, but what makes them even better still at a competitive level is actually being able to use their abilities. And I think Cerberus is going to pose a huge threat here to the Camelot Kings, because they don't know if that's going to be for solo guaranteed. I mean, I know we've been seeing a ton of solo serve as is, but if the Camelot Kings want to try and run back that hell from game 1 for variety, and Jade Dragons already have this Cerberus in tow, it's going to make things a little bit more complicated, because that is a strong matchup, I think, for the Serb and solo.
And the Hell never really got to make it to late game for the first time that she was picked around this set, so it's a little interesting to see it picked immediately into the Serb, where previously it was in the top 3 slot, and then the Cerberus was grabbed immediately afterwards after the bans that were all said and done. Kings will elect for Raijin, so even though they been banning the Giannis away, they left it open this time around, and they feel that this Raijin is more impactful for themselves, making it more impactful for Big Man Tings, but that gives Giannis over away to Hurrywind, and that's not a player that I would want to be giving Giannis to.
Jade Dragons don't necessarily have to take Giannis here, though. There is a chance, I would say, that Jade Dragons might just wait and withhold Hurrywind's pick, and even though it would likely result in him having a couple of those mid laners banned away, I have to remember that might open things up for PandaCat later on in the draft, because he's been kind of focused out in games 1 and 2. He's been having his pick prioritized more towards the end of the Jade Dragons compositions, and as a result, Kings have been ensuring that he's not going to get the Artemises, he's not going to get the Iznamis, and I think that while PandaCat is an excellent hunter, mechanically speaking, it's definitely ideal to have him on a pick that he can not only play aggressively with, but also just look to have a little bit more survivability, because OE, I think, is kind of stressed at times when it comes to survivability, and I think we've really got some insight towards that in game number 2, but he's not going to take his chances. He's going to prioritize the Artemis early on. A lot of team fight already out of this Jade Dragons composition.
Yeah, this is why I love Game 3s out of these top-level teams. It really changes up that Game 3 dynamic of the picks and bans, where Game 1, you take maybe one nice little target ban at somebody, and then you just kind of go meta, and then you just run down the list. What's good? All right, cool, grab it. What's not good? Okay, whatever, grab it. Now we're in Game 3, where they're taking 30-plus seconds a pick, because they really have to think, what are we willing to give away if we take X, Y, or Z here? They say, okay, we may be giving up Hurrywind's Giannis, but we're at least giving PandaCat Artemis, which has been banned away consistently. We're not picking up the Giannis, but we can get Sanford Soccer on something aggressive with this Erlang Shen. It's all these give and takes that have to go through every single one of these picks in their mind as to what they're willing to give up by taking something else.
Camelot Kings might want to start taking note of where Fafnir could end up falling here, because we know that Fafnir is something that the Jade Dragons definitely love running, and right now they've got 2 carries, J-Mac, that I think would definitely benefit from the likes of that Coerce. Artio going to be banned in that 4th, 5th position here, and Terra will meet a similar fate. Was curious to see whether or not the Camelot Kings would look to try and prioritize some of their front line, but one thing that can be said is all of the carries are established for the most part here from the Camelot Kings, and I actually think that this puts a little bit more favoritism towards the Jade Dragons, because I think I would rather have the front line intact as opposed to the other way around, because now you know exactly what the Camelot Kings are going to be looking to do from the damage options that they have taken here. And I think that for the Jade Dragons, they can continue just trying to hammer away at this heavy lockdown potential, because Hell only has 1 cleanse, and I wouldn't say that Raijin and Rom have the most reliable escapes, and if anything, the delay that they introduce with their ultimates could actually work in the Jade Dragons' favor.
They continue to push these bans further and further towards the picks here. Sylvanas? Okay, now, I know Genetics had a Sylvanas game. We've also seen one from Inbound as well previously, but a ban against Sylvanas when there's still...
Erlang Artemis.
Okay, Erlang Artemis, it's good for them. I would have imagined maybe a Khepri ban here. Give a little bit of extra safety, something maybe for this Hell. Would have been a great frontline asset to them. Lots of CC lockdown. The revive would have been a huge one for them, but I guess they feel that these 2 healers specifically, these more frontline-esque style of Guardians are maybe a bigger priority to take away from Genetics. That does leave the Gilgamesh open, however, and the Camelot Kings will make sure to take that one away. Not just with the Artemis, but they also make sure to take the Giannis away. So now we're going to see where Hurrywind chooses to go towards.
Hurrywind could look to run it back on the Persephone, or he could even look towards Morgan Le Fay. That's also been another really popular pick. I would say even Hera has some viability here, but Fenrir going to be locked in first and foremost, and I think that might be the actual support choice for Polar Bear Mike here. But I also believe that a big aspect to take note of with this Erlang Shen and Artemis is that if the Camelot Kings go for a Khepri, I think they might have just sealed their fate in this set, J-Mac, because there is so much burst damage in general. It's not really even an emphasis around single target burst like the Camelot Kings love trying to deter with this Khepri, and I have some very steep concerns because there's just so much CC and lockdown potential that I'm not sold that Genetics is going to be able to get these Scares blessings off.
So then maybe you bait him into the pick instead.
Yes.
So instead of banning it away, you allow him to pick it because you feel that your composition is better at fighting it than something like the Sylvanas or even the Terra for it. So they do just that. The Jade Dragons force this Khepri pick to come through because once again, Genetics is banned out of existence, essentially. You take, 3 Guardians at the top half of it. You also see the Umoja and Artio and a Cerberus on the flip side for it. I mean, again, they're making Genetics really dip down so far into this God pool to find something comfortable for him. He found the Khepri, but as you were highlighting, this Khepri may not have been their best option.
I think that if the Camelot Kings are able to just barrel it down in the laning phases, their win condition is going to, I think, depend very heavily on just out-damaging the Jade Dragons throughout that laning phase portion. But if it's anything like what we saw from Jade Dragons in game number 1, I would imagine buff invades to be the focus here out of the Jade Dragons, and I think there's going to be a lot of pressure applied to this Raijin Rom, especially that can make it incredibly difficult for that Khepri to even really reach that stride. But not only that, but I would also wager that the Jade Dragons, they have consistent reinitiation in comparison to that of the Camelot Kings. They really only have this Gilgamesh to depend on. That Winter Shamash, I'm not sold is going to be able to do it alone, because Khepri, I think, is going to have to focus entirely on just trying to keep one, if any, of the carries alive.
Yeah, one of the big boons that the Camelot Kings had was that reinitiation with the Cerberus with Variety. That was one of his big things. Is, okay, fight's done, sustain up for a second. Okay, let me jump right back into the fray. Now they don't have that option. They do have a ton of sustain for their team, though. They have the revive from Khepri. They have all the healing from Hell. So they have some fight back if these fights do become extended. Sure, they may not have reinitiation available to themselves because really it's Gilgamesh or Khepri, and you kind of want the Khepri to stay a little bit further back once the later fights come through. But at the very least for themselves, they do have a lot of ways to stay in the fight via that Hell, and if they can manage to get the revive and get them to safety. That's always the caveat is, yeah, you got the revive. Did you get them back to safety with it? I think Camelot Kings have a good fighting chance to bring this back here, but it's all going to come down to who's going to take Game 3. Will it be the Dragons or will it be the Camelot Kings? I think that's the question that everybody is waiting to have answered here, as these are the two of the top 4 teams going into this weekend. Both of these teams need a huge win for themselves.
Up here between the Jade Dragons and the Camelot Kings. Thank you, J-Mac. Thank you, Taco. One final time this set. Dulcin, Mifflin, and Doug will be bringing you the action. And this one's so important for standings, Miff. Right now, the Kings are 9-3. The Jade Dragons are 8-4. And so with a win here for the Jade Dragons, they'll leapfrog up a couple of spots and the Camelot Kings down a spot or two. Everything can shift around in this one. The Camelot Kings with a win will tie the Olympus Bolts in wins, at least. The Bolts have one less loss. They'll play tomorrow against a very, very good Leviathans team. So a lot on the table here for these two teams. You want to play as few games as possible in the Phase 2 playoffs, and a win here for the Dragons would get them underway in that conversation, and same for the Kings.
And what better way to start Game 3 than with drafts like this? I think it exemplifies both of these styles, or team styles rather, incredibly well. I mean, the Camelot Kings are looking to extend the match, utilizing Hell and Khepri just to make these team fights hellish, if you would. And
nice.
The Jade Dragons bring a lot of early game pressure. Sam for Soccer on the Erlang Shen and PBM on this Fenrir are looking to set up haste very early on, as exemplified by an early steal of a neutral objective there. I think this Artemis is their sole late game hyper carry, barring Persephone out of mid.
Yeah, Hurrywin did a lot of damage as that game went on, despite the Camelot Kings coming out ahead of things from what we saw there. And so the Jade Dragons, look, the Camelot Kings, they've got themselves 5 sets of beads, and I don't think there's any surprise there, Miff. You got a little bit of CC in everyone for the Jade Dragons right now, and that's something that the desk raised a bit of concern about. There's so much lockdown, there's so much target potential, single target, maybe even multi-target potential for this Jade Dragons team. How do the Kings fight against it? The genetics kind of has to go to the Khepri because a lot of other Guardians either taken away or banned away. And so how does this Khepri then fight back into this composition? It's gonna be a game of chess here, a lot of figuring out to do for the Camelot Kings. It would help if Panda Cat dies early, but that won't happen.
Yeah, not this time around. Lesson learned by the Jade Dragons. Netroid doesn't miss autos, so don't give him the opportunity to land them against you. And to answer your question about this Khepri, I think it's not so much as what he needs to do, but it's what he's able to stop the Jade Dragons to do. Khepri is a character that does not essentially have his own game plan. Instead, it's, I see what you're trying to do, and I want to make sure you're not having as much fun as possible. I'm going to try and remove all your capacity for fun. Oh, you're trying to brutalize my teammate? Abduct. Oh, you think you've got single target damage? Maybe I drop a little blessing over here and revive him. It's very annoying to deal with this pick, and that seems to be the strategy behind the entirety of this Kings draft. Attempted blue buff invade here. Looks like it may have been successful. Rather, no. Variety able to secure that one for his team. I like it a lot. Variety as well is that exact same strategy. Yep. I'm going to cleanse whatever CC you got. I'm going to heal out my team. Nice poke, loser. Unfortunate I'm playing Hell. And that's exactly how the Camelot Kings is going to try to approach these late-game team fights. It's whether or not they can make it to those late-game team fights. Sam for Soccer, PBM, even Hurrywin to a certain extent once he gets that ultimate available, all incredibly strong in the early game. The Jade Dragons are looking to make this one a fast one.
Yep, Polar Bear Mike, he's got Blink online for this Fenrir early on of the game. Looks like considering a Sledge for his first item there as well. So really, you know, so often we talk about whether it's jungle, mid, hell, everyone on the map. Level 5 is that big, nice to me. That big pivot point where you can start to see some aggression. Really feel that way with the Fenrir though, right? Where especially with Blink, Mike probably happy to journey anywhere on the map here. Let's blink in, find a Ragnarok. Hopefully I don't die for it, but if I get the beads on the back end, worthwhile, especially considering the single target and multi-target lockdown that we've discussed here for the Jade Dragons. So maybe it's going to be PBM if in rotation time and in the first early minutes of this game to make an impact, strip some of those beads away.
but it's going to be hard. He's got 5 beads to strip away, so every single member of the Camelot Kings has CC immunity, if not inherently built into the kit, and some of them do, but also 5 beads in the relic slots. Netroid, though, caught out here inside the wave.
Sanford Soccer blinks forward, gets the pin, but Netroid has the beads. Will
Target swap.
Genetics now be caught out? No, Sanford Soccer will not use his ultimate. If PBM was level 5, things looking a little bit different there. But hey, first set of beads down in this game, and Netroid's the one who had to use them. So now an impending threat over here on the left side of the map.
Still has the ultimate available, though, to give you a little bit of CC immunity or a straight-up Aegis if you're actually able to make it up into the air. So he's not completely high and dry here. And inside of the late-game teamfight, it's not just the beads that PBM is contending with. Cleanse will get you out of anyone's mouth. I mean, he's going to have a very hard time finding Ragnarok, so I think this Fenrir pick is generally just for that Brutalize, the Unchained, the damage output that he's able to bring inside of this engagement. I think it's shown very clearly that he knows it too. He's going for a power build, at least slightly so. In the early, could be a Blackthorn, could be a Sledge, something along those lines to even push him further beyond what he's capable of with something like a Thieves. And it is Sledge picked up here. That's a large infusion of HP into your build. You got a decent amount of power here as well. I think PBM realizing that this has to be a quick pace for him because in the late game team fight in particular, I don't think he's just about ever going to get a Ragnarok.
Well, that's such a good point, Miff, that I'll return to in a moment after Sanford Soccer duels out with Captain Twig, but it's a 3v1. This is not a 1v1. Sanford Soccer nearly winning it, but Captain Twig gets the Scarab's Blessing as if that mattered. And first blood over to the Camelot Kings and this Raijin, where I was going to go to next, Miff, because we've not only talked about the beads that are going to have to get used here by the Kings, but the cleanses and the ability to get yourself out of these fights. Big Man Tings can just Taiko drums if he's about to get engaged on. So there are these abilities that can be used at the right time to bail out the Camelot Kings. But all that to say that Big Man Tings has got an early kill on the board.
He has, and did you see how hard Sanford Soccer had to work there, utilizing the heal, landing every single auto attack, and at the end of the day, Genetics was still around. Even if that kill got a little bit closer, even if he was able to actually finish off Captain Twig's HP bar, Scarab's Blessing is still there. It was utilized. It doesn't actually get used up there, but Camelot Kings have got a draft that is probably, bar none, one of the most disgusting, annoying drafts you could play against in SMITE.
Variety cleanses himself of the pin of Sanford Soccer and then uses the bead, so Stygian Torment gets used by Fine-OK and not pulling Variety back in. Got to admire the attempt. Now there's a set of beads down on the right-hand side of the map if there's an opportunity to re-gank onto Variety. Netroid's beads just now coming back up, so we didn't see that double down on by the Jade Dragons. But still some pressure finding its way onto right. Sanford Soccer dashes into Variety. He uses the cleanse once again, waiting for the ultimate, but he doesn't need it. Sanford Soccer is stuck around on the right side of the map, and it pays off with a kill.
Captain Twig is hovering nearby, has the Winds of Shamash available, but Sam's going to heal up.
Yeah, Sam taunts him back in on
Not
the
in
drop
time.
kick. Perfect from Sanford Soccer, and the heal never came through. Fine-OK was not there either, so Captain Twig, big return kill. Not only to get a bit of an advantage there for the Camelot Kings, not only send Sanford Soccer back to base, but you're securing the blue buff on your side of the map.
Fine-OK will be benefiting from a lead himself, though, so Cerberus certainly okay with how this one pans out. Fine-OK himself pretty happy that Variety is able to fall down, and I'm sure Sanford Soccer's probably okay with that trade as well, considering his entire job on this Erlang Shen is to establish a lead for his lanes here, and he's already done so. 1 level for Cerberus over the hell inside of the soul lane, but it's not about what you're able to do once, it's what you're able to do continually, and I want to see this Erlang Shen continually within the soul lane, just trying to keep this pressure up. Variety cannot be allowed to free farm because every single pro that has played against this hell in an interview has said there comes a point where he just got too much defense, too much sustain, and he does enough damage within his kit, just the self-scaling of leveling up the abilities, that it's annoying to deal with them. Variety has not reached that point just yet. It's up to Sanford Soccer to keep him from getting there.
Now, we've seen Erlang Shen in this set already. We've seen Erlang Shen struggle in this set already. By the time we reach late game, Captain Twig was having a hard time finding those engages, so that's something to keep your eyes on here. If you're the Jade Dragons or a Jade Dragons fan. Grasp of Death has rooted Captain Twig in, but is there a re-engage? It's a bit slow here, so Captain Twig able to walk away, and then there's a taunt in from Sanford Soccer. Winds of Shamash makes things interesting, but look at Big Man Tings free casting on the back line. He's got the first kill. Taiko drums pouring their way into Fine-OK. It's a Ragnarok from PBM, but
What?
Captain Twig just drop kicks onto Hurrywind. He'll leap away. It's a double kill for the Raijin. Hurry's got to get this one, but he won't. Captain Twig walks away.
Captain Twig is having one of the best beat weekends of his career so far, and Hurrywind
it's
on the
a triple.
receiving end. Triple for Big Man Tings. Tough one. Jade Dragons, they were looking for a fast one, Dave, and well, they got it, but maybe not exactly how they wanted it.
What is it with Raijins just getting massive leads in this set? It happened for Hurrywind in game 1. Big Man Ting's got a few kills in game 2. Now Big Man Ting's got a triple kill 9 minutes into game number 3. He's got the Chronos Pen, and he's going to go into Soul Gem next. And we talked about it on the waiting room, where this Raijin has just felt not undiveable, because that's never really the case. You can dive a Raijin, of course, but it's felt untouchable almost so far this set, where you might get a kill or two onto it, but you're spending so much, and now that's already something to be concerned about, as Big Man Tings has got 4 kills 9.5 minutes in.
Man, and Captain Twig plays that fight just about mechanically perfectly. I couldn't program a robot to play that situation as well as Twig did. Tosspot doesn't have anything on what that Gilgamesh performance was, that knockback onto Hurrywind to self-peel, the disengage for himself, utilizing the Scare's Blessing to survive that engagement as well. The Camelot Kings, man, they've come away with a pretty sizable lead already, 2,000 gold, and Panda Cat hasn't been allowed to play the match just yet. Looks like he's going for the crit build. Could be a Rage in that second slot yet again, but the Jade Dragons aren't getting a ton of kills. It's going to be a while to get that stacked up.
Yeah, man, Captain Twig has really turned around his set. Game 1, we always reference back to it. It was quiet. The Erlang Shen, we got to a point where the conversation was he doesn't want to taunt in anyone because of how far ahead the Jade Dragons were. That script has been flipped. The Ratatoskr looked great, died a few times, but ultimately found the damage in the dive. Now the Gilgamesh at 104 has affected every single kill on the map, and it's Big Man Tings with the 2-level lead that has also benefited from some of that early pressure. So you have to imagine, Miff, if you're the Jade Dragons right now, you find yourself not too far behind, but you are behind. You can't fight around this mid lane, because Big Man Tings is just going to win the fight, it feels like.
He has a 2-level lead already. Captain Twig is rotating over to the Soul Lane, seeing if maybe he can catch out fine. Okay, not this time around, but yeah, you're right, man. This Raijin is a threat. He's got good survivability in his own right, but Netroid, where are you walking?
I admire it, because it might result in a kill anyway. The snipes from Netroid are up. There's a trap down at the bottom. Watch out, and down goes Netroid.
Just a trap?
Tutsky stuck around, but ended up stunning Netroid. So Sanford whiffs on the initial, but ends up helping with the kill nonetheless. But now the Jade Dragons being dove on by the Pyromancer, and it is a rampage for Big Man Ting. So on one side of the map, you at least get a kill for your Artemis, but on another side of the map, Captain Twig's continuing to do what he's done this entire game. A Thunder Crash forward met with the Ragnarok, and that'll keep PBM on the map.
It will. He was able to walk his way out of there, but the Tier 1 tower removed from the map, and that's never coming back for the Jade Dragons. And it's a huge bastion of safety lost out immediately 12 minutes into this game, and the Camelot Kings are continually pushing this lead. I think the Jade Dragons do find a silver lining, though. Get Panda Cat involved. Clearly, you're able to get a kill at least. Tusky is going to be a great ability just to stop this onslaught from the Camelot Kings. Caledonian Boar should just act as at least a peel tool, if not an engage for your team. And Gold Fury as well. I mean, okay, Dragons, I see you.
Wow, this is going to be actually pretty heavy in closing up some of that gold gap. We were looking at 2K or so, and now we're just above 1,000. So the Jade Dragons definitely showing a do not quit type attitude right now. But again, that's largely centered around this left side of the map where Panda Cat was able to find an advantage. Panda Cat now has a 2-level lead over Netroid. Sanford able to put some pressure there. But that's all been where Big Man Tings isn't. That's where it feels like, Miff, the Jade Dragons are winning, is where this Raijin is not. If you can play around that, you have a chance at closing this gold gap. But at some point, there's got to be an answer. At some point, there's going to be a 5v5, and the 5-0 Raijin is going to be a part of it.
And he's moving into an Obsidian Shard as well.
I've seen that a lot today.
It's a lot of damage.
Early Ob Shard.
Very, very good power spike for him. He's going to be shredding just about anyone on the map. And Pestilence, yeah, you got a little anti-heal. I don't think it's enough to stop this Ob Shard. The Cloak for Mike, yeah, that's not enough to stop this Ob Shard. I mean, you go for Wing Blade for Sanford potentially. It's not going to stop this Ob Shard, man. This Raijin is off to a roaring start, and the Camelot Kings, rightfully so, continually playing around him. Pyromancer should be free.
And free it is. Panda Cat, my eyes were down there when we were talking about the Hunters, opting for a build that we've already seen once today, Ichabale into the Rage. And so a bit different from what we've normally seen on the Artemis, where you just build straight through to the bows. You still probably, I think the last time we talked about this, you mentioned at some point you still want to build, Wind Demon. Let's utilize some of that attack speed, maybe into a Silver Branch a bit later on. But we'll see from Panda Cat here, who continues to push that advantage on the left side, and that's really where the Jade Dragons hoping that they can find a lead later on in this game, because the gold NIF down to only 800. We were at 2,000 a few minutes ago, and the Jade Dragons have closed things up.
Take a peek at that XP per minute, man. This Raijin's sitting at 730. He is roaring.
Contextualize that for me. Is 650 and down kind of average, and 730 is just
I'd say
ridiculous?
600 is pretty average in its own right.
Sure.
Unless you're playing jungle, in which case you're popping off if you're sitting around that 600 mark, or support.
Right.
Generally, everyone else is about average. He's about 100 over where he should be.
Oh, it's a great boar from Panda Cat as Captain Twig jumped into the back, but Sanford Soccer is here as well. Netdruid has to go up to the sky.
Aegis.
It's a great Aegis from Panda Cat, and why not fight around the left side of the map? Netdruid will survive, and there is a Scarab's Blessing here if there is a redive, but why not? Now we see this again, and look, Big Man Tings was in. He was closing that gap, but the Jade Dragons able to get the kill and leave before it happened.
It is absolutely nuts how good and consistent a player Panda Cat is. Every single match this set so far, 2-3 level lead over Netdruid, regardless of the map state, regardless of what the Camelot Kings have been capable of doing. And now, having fought around them, the Jade Dragons, for the first time this game, are able to get proactive towards the center of the map, at least poking that tier 1 tower. It's so huge for them. They need to continually get Panda Cat involved. Rage finds a stack. It is going to be Wind Demon next up for him as well. As long as this Artemis is there, that is the silver lining. That is the win condition for the Jade Dragons. If the Camelot Kings can force 4v4s on the Fire Giant side of the map, if they can just leave Netdruid to the proverbial wolf that is Panda Cat, screw him.
Right.
I don't care about Netdruid. Right. Yeah, be that man. Stand on that cross for us, because the Camelot Kings are winning elsewhere. If Panda Cat wants to be that crouching tiger on the left-hand side, ignore him. Don't play around him, and that's how the Camelot Kings are going to win.
Yeah, Big Man Tings, still 5-0. That's been that way for a little while. Haven't found the ability to play around this Raijin because the Jade Dragons have been pushing things on the left. Panda Cat with a inch-perfect Caledonian boar in that previous fight, and a rare kind of insta-death for Captain Twig from what we've seen so far this set, at least in game number 2. At least, so the self-peel absolutely there for this Artemis. Not only the damage, but then you got the beads, then you got the Aegis. Everything used effectively perfectly by Panda Cat. And then kind of a different story there for Netdruid, where Sanford Soccer with the Stone Cutting Sword and the Toxic Blade was able to get Netdruid, got him up into the ultimate, forced Genetics to come in, try to save his Hunter. So a bit more effective in the Hunter dive, maybe in large part due to the lead that's there, were the Jade Dragons. Stygian Torment used by FineOK and the stun as Captain Twig has made his way to the right, but no blue buff to invade, and maybe that's all FineOK's got to do here. Let's not put any more kills on the board from the mid lane to the right side of the map.
Yeah, FineOK's job is to survive and wait for the savior that is Panda Cat to rotate throughout some of these team fights, and he's starting to get to that point. Already level 16, only 4 more available to him. Genetics, nice little abduct here, does find Polar Bear Mike, but the Camelot Kings, go in, play around Tings.
Mike does not have his beads, but he does have Ragnarok, and that's where things can get awkward when this Fenrir has to use the ultimate just to get out of the fights, and then you're wondering where the engage is outside of some full rune leaps. And so luckily for Mike, doesn't use his ultimate there, but when you've got Ankh and Blink, you're sacrificing the beads. Now Big Man Tings joins the rest of the Camelot Kings around this Oni Fury, definitely not going all that quickly. Polar Bear Mike somewhat low here, not fully all that tanky just yet. Still has Ragnarok if he's able to find that opening. Frenzy gets used now by the Camelot Kings. FineOK's in the back. Polar Bear Mike looking for a Ragnarok target, but Variety cleanses it on out. Big taunt in from Sanford Soccer. Look for Panda Cat in this fight. The boar flying through the Camelot Kings, and that'll send them right on back. It's a drop kick against the wall onto FineOK. A double stun is there as well. Sanford Soccer getting sniped, and Netdruid hits them all. Sanford Soccer is the first death in this one. Polar Bear Mike has to leap away, and somehow he'll survive. FineOK abducted, and I think he'll be the last one to go down.
Panda Cat, the only one in range, still does avoid the Raiju, so should be able to stay alive in this one. The Jade Dragons just chase it out a little bit too far. It was a great taunt from Sanford Soccer. It was a phenomenal stun from FineOK, but Hurrywind's not in range to follow up. Panda Cat surely can't follow up if this Persephone can't, who has way less range on this Artemis. Caledonian board does ring through almost the entirety of the Camelot Kings, but that was the majority of Panda Cat's contribution to that engagement. And now, with 2 dead, Final K dead for 20 seconds, I love this play from the Camelot Kings, who are immediately barreling down the opposite side. They've already spawned up the Oni minion waves, so Panda Cat has to head back over to duo lane to contend with that. What's on the map then? Pyromancer, even potentially a Fire Giant 19 minutes in.
Wild to me that Panda Cat is as low as he is on the damage charts, and Netrioid is as high as he is on the damage charts, given what we've seen on the left side of the map so far. Netrioid with the snipes, with the disengage, has just been able to do more, granted, around Big Man Tings and the rest of his team, but I think that's a good piece of data to kind of back up the fact that it was the boar, and that was kind of it for Panda Cat. There was no chance to build up that damage in that previous fight, whereas the Taiko drums and the more ranged focus damage then from Big Man Tings was able to do it. There's a tier 2 tower under threat on the right side of the map, and the Jade Dragons happy just to push things down here. Sanford Soccer attempting to invade will successfully find an invade, but now there's a Phoenix being looked at. The Jade Dragons have to address this.
Can't believe Twig is allowing Sanford Soccer to stick around. I thought Sam would have backed to put up a defense, but maybe the Dragons communicating that really they've got the defense handled on their own, so Sam can go for a tier 2. This does mean the Camelot Kings, now spotting Sam on that left-hand side, know that they've got 5v4 potential, but Twig again heads back to base to deal with Sanford Soccer. Got to think that had he just stuck to him, he would have maintained this tier 2 and potentially stops his back.
Round 2?
Yeah, round 2.
Maybe.
No way.
No, Sanford Soccer is able to dash on away from that one. So 1 and 4 is Sanford Soccer. Now, and if you erase player names from this, when we just talked about Erlang Shen in this set, it's now the second time we've seen Erlang Shen struggle a little bit. I get forward, I find a taunt, I die immediately. Has felt the storyline for this Erlang Shen has been from game 1 on to game 3 now. So the Camelot Kings playing with a much bigger gold lead. It had shrunk down sub 1,000. Now it's built up about 3,000 for the Camelot Kings. And hey, Miff, I think that's right around the time that the Kings said, all right, we're going to take a big fight, but it's going to be with our mid laner, around our mid laner. And that gave Netrioid the opportunity to play in these fights a little bit more. And so it's house money here for the Camelot Kings as long as you can keep Big Man Tings alive.
And that is the entirety of the plan so far. It is worth noting that Netrioid does have a great tank shredder build, has the kin size already, silver branch bow, so he's dealing a little bit less damage to objectives than Panda Cat will, as Panda Cat has both Rage and Wind Demon already. But inside of the team fight itself, if Netrioid's hitting PBM, Sanford Soccer, or Final K, he's going to be much more effective than his contemporaries on the other side. Final K, isolated in the jungle, should be able to just walk out.
Final K does have beads. You don't want to have to use those. Jump. PBM does not have beads. Brutalize gets used. There's an Abduct onto the Fenrir, and then a Ragnarok gets used for the CC immunity. Wow. Last bit of damage connects onto Mike. And so, yeah, Variety's built somewhat tanky here, but don't shrug off or don't ignore the damage that this hell can do. So now Mike, minus a Ragnarok, is going to have to help his team contest the FG. If there is a contest, Frenzy. I'm not sure there will be.
No, that Fire Giant is a foregone conclusion. Wow. Maybe with a Grasp of Death from all the way downtown. Could have attempted a steal, but Sam on the opposite side of the map. Panda Cat showing himself in mid, and with PBM essentially being sent back to base already, means that there's no way for the Jade Dragons to actually contend with that one. Camelot Kings, Fire Giant on 5, 3 towers still standing for the Jade Dragons in a incredibly strong siege composition. Send Captain Twig alone as a backline disruption. Utilize Scare's Blessing to make sure he walks out of there alive every single time. Off the revive, you have Variety to heal you all the way back to full, almost immediately on the tail end. I think the siege from the Kings is going to be very hard to deal with, especially considering that the Jade Dragons are a lot of single target damage. Erlang Shen, Fenrir, even Artemis, really strong, can kill one person very quickly, but if you're killing one guy, you only got to revive one guy. Genetics has the ultimate single target denial ability.
And as we've mentioned a lot, that one guy kind of needs to be Big Man Tings at this point at 5:02.
Yeah, twice, by the way.
Yeah, twice. Look, with the Scarab's Blessing there, that's going to be difficult to do. Big Man Tings, I think, you know, it's funny because it feels like we have this conversation a lot about how good of a mid laner Big Man Tings really is. Good. Incredible. He's been incredible for this Camelot Kings team. Incredible. Every time the Camelot Kings are winning, he feels like he's near the forefront of that conversation. Think about the types of drafts that this Kings team built at the beginning of Season 8. It was, let's put Twig on something that can set up, and let's put Tings on something that can knock down. It feels like a lot of drafts built around this guy and deserves every bit of credit that he'll receive, win or loss, after a game like he's having here today. Mid lane tier 2 down, left lane tier 2 down, right lane tier 2 down. So with 2 minutes and 15 seconds left on the FG buff, 23 minutes into the game, the Camelot Kings will cycle back for the Gold Fury and then maybe turn their eyes to the Phoenixes.
It's not a massive lead, so I do agree with them just going ahead and collecting as much gold as they can. Are approaching that 6-item slot. Round 2 is happening, but I don't think Twig's going to let us have it. Oh. Truthfully, should just disengage from here, and there is no chase potential, as 9 turns Blessing has already been used by Sanford Soccer. So Camelot Kings pick up every remaining tower on the map and the gold free, head back to base, start finishing up those 6 items. Captain Twig actually picking up a Heartseeker. His burst damage just went through the roof. If he's able to close gap on the Hurrywind, Hurrywind's not going to live very long. Panda Cat likely will, as he has the Caledonian board to self-heal for himself, so Hurrywind likely going to be the target for this Gilgamesh from the Camelot Kings, and everybody else approaching that tankiness and that 6-item slot as well. Every relic in the game available, barring the Blink from Sanford Soccer, who just use it trying to isolate Twig inside of the jungle. The Camelot Kings, I like their odds in this fight, man. All they have to do is drag out these engagements as long as possible, and it's not just the HP 5 from Fire Giant that makes me say that. It's the healing from Hell. It's the fact that they've got that safety net from Scarab's Blessing. They've got great isolation tools. As long as they can burn through Caledonian Boar and potentially Stygian Torment as well, I think they win the team fight.
Still a minute left on the FG buff, so still time to siege a mid lane Phoenix here for the Camelot Kings. Left lane minions get dealt with by the Phoenix. Everyone in the game has got their ultimates ready except Twig, except Sam for Soccer. So we might see a slight delay here. Sam does have his Hidden Blade, whereas Captain Twig does not, but a Heartseeker is a big advantage over a non-existent item there in the final slot for Sam for Soccer. So while that is a difference, it's more impactful as the completed Heartseeker. A lot of that damage connects onto Sam right now. Variety taken down
huge.
Somewhat low here. There's a big bit of lockdown from Sam for Soccer and Hurrywind as well. But now there's no grasp of death. Panda Cat takes 2 snipes from Netrioid, so the Hunter has to back away. Frenzy gets used here as Big Man Tings sends some damage out with the Tycho drums. Polar Bear Mike has to use the Ragnarok to get out, and the Camelot Kings have bought space, and they bought a mid lane Phoenix.
They play it so well, waiting for these tools to get used. Stygian Torment, expended, go in. We send Netrioid up to the air, target Panda Cat, drop him down to half. No way, Panda Cat sticks around. Go in. The Camelot Kings, like a tactical strike, able to strip away the mid Phoenix now, backing up as Fire Giant has worn off. They're getting the maximum value of this Phoenix going down. They're going to have to be contending, Jade Dragons that is, with these Fire Mini Waves for the entirety of this Fire Giant dance. I think this is the right call from the Dragons, seeing if maybe they can isolate Twig. A little bit of a lazy back, spots out by Sam for Soccer, but that's going to spell the end of that one.
Yeah, that's smart.
Yeah, Camelot Kings, they're going to go ahead and reset.
That's smart. If you're the Jade Dragons and you full-on engage on that, you don't know where the Camelot Kings are, you just lose the game. You got to buy some time here as the Fire Giant is dropped off. Will turn enhanced in the next 3 minutes. The Jade Dragons might not feel like they're in a position to really contest. We have seen some big swings in this game where even in slower starts, you know, it's been 2,000-3,000 early, and then eventually just balloons up after 1 FG. There's been such, I'm not going to say little pushback because we've seen some Phoenix defenses, but one team or the other, and in the last 2 it's been the Camelot Kings, have driven such a small lead into massive numbers. That has almost made the second FG non-contestable in a couple of games here, and I think that's what the Jade Dragons are thinking as well. They go to the left side of the map, considering the left side Phoenix. That'll send a couple members of the Camelot Kings back to base, and if nothing else, it's just delayed the FG. You have to go back now if you're the Jade Dragons. PBM's going to deal with this mid-fire wave, excuse me.
Yeah, the Jade Dragons, I think, maybe considering, all right, Fire Giant spawning right now. We know exactly when it spawns because they got the timer from it last time. So they try and strip away that left side Phoenix, but the Camelot Kings, ever privy to that strategy, are able to reset in time. Does delay the Fire Giant going down by just a moment. Sanford Soccer, kind of stubborn, trying to keep up this push on the opposite side, but it's not fast enough, and he's not enough as one man to generate enough threat to force the Camelot Kings back to base. Instead, it's Fire Giant on 5, and the Siege gets to start up yet again. Exact same strategy as last time. They've got a lot of time to work with here. All they have to do is strip some of these defensive tools from the Jade Dragons and re-engage.
Watch out for Captain Twig, who now has the Mannequin's Hidden Blade. Top damage in the game goes to Gilgamesh. That might continue here if the space is big enough that Big Man Tings is helping create. At 5:02, Big Man Tings continuing his run, but there are still 100% kill participation for the Camelot Kings jungler. Twig pushes in the mid-wave And now there's a leap in on the right side from Polar Bear Mike. Ragnarok gets used here, but
dead.
he's immediately just abducted back in. The Camelot Kings have found the opening kill. Twig will jump away, but here are the snipes from Netrioid.
Hurrywin drop down low, half before the fight. Camelot Kings going to take this Phoenix easily. Jade Dragons still have a couple of tools to work with. Stygian Torment, 9 turns Blessing, and Caledonian War available. PBM, though, dead for 30.
How many times have we seen Mike use Ragnarok, walk forward, realize he's getting nothing, and then try to turn around? Right, that's what I mean.
He can't grab anybody.
He can't do anything. Feels like it's either going to get cleansed, it's going to get Scarabs blessed, or he's just going to die. And unfortunately, only has 2 deaths, but pretty indicative of the way that this game has gone for the Jade Dragon support. Now all 3 Phoenixes down. Mid lane is going to respawn here shortly if the Jade Dragons are able to survive that long. This is a steep, steep hill to climb. 2.5 minutes left on the FG buff. Plenty of gold to spend. Maybe one final push for the set.
10,000 gold, soon to be even more after this Primal Fury, and every single Phoenix stripped away, so this is going to give the Camelot Kings a little bit of time to reset here as the rest of their waves start to work through the entirety of the map. Jade Dragons, I think, have got one play in front of them from here, and it's push up these waves as much as they can before they lock eyes with any singular member of the Camelot Kings, and when that happens, back up, get into your Titan room, try and defend from there, because in neutral territory, I don't think the Jade Dragons take these fights. 4 sets of beads still available for the Camelot Kings. 1 minute left on Genetics' set of beads, and I don't think we care too much about Genetics' beads inside of this one. PBM has not had a single Ragnarok come through this game, I'm pretty sure. Maybe one towards that 10-minute mark, and Panda Cat,
what are you doing? Panda Cat has to use the boar, and look at the onslaught onto the Jade Dragons Hunter. Captain Twig deletes them, and now the Jade Dragons are defending their lives in this set against a Camelot Kings team who's got everyone. Poor Bear Mike will leap away. Now it's Samper Soccer left alone with the Kings draft, and he'll get whittled on down by Netrioid, who's aggressive. He's forward, he's dealing the damage. Final K will use the beads, but he's thunder crashed on by big man Tings, and the siege is here.
Can't be losing your win condition that early. Mike in.
Hurrywin now can supply some damage, but not if Twig has anything to say about it. The Camelot Kings decimate the Dragons in Game 3.
That was a convincing win. I've said it many a time. Jungle is much weaker here in Season 8. Wouldn't believe it watching that performance from Captain Twig. My man was doing so much on the map, controlling team fights, finding solo kills, creating space, taking out towers, initiating, disengaging. Any buzzword that you could associate with SMITE, Captain Twig was performing on. Great, great game for him.
And the desk will break this down after the break, but now things get interesting for that first seed. The Kings have the same amount of wins as the Bolts, but the Bolts have 1 less game played. The Bolts will play tomorrow, so the Phase 2 playoff seeding still up for grabs, and the Kings have done what they needed to do. They beat the Jade Dragons to start off this weekend in the SPL. That's it for Mifflin and I. We'll take a break, and then the desk will be back to break down the set.
Genetics. Who needs good ping when you got mechanics like that between Kings and Genetics?
off your halo. You're beautiful. I don't care if it tears me apart. We couldn't let go from the get-go. I think we're past trying to hide who we are. Baby, I don't mind you calling. I'm still awake in my bed. Say the things you shouldn't be saying. I don't want you to act like you still have that halo. Halo, got the halo. Like you still have that halo. Halo, you should let it go. Don't stop. I love it when you touch my skin. No, it's bad, it's bad. I don't care if the walls are caving in right now. I need you to kill off my lonely nights. Otherwise, I'll just be dead inside. I can't keep pretending you don't exist. Hate the lies, you know I can't resist, yeah. Baby, I don't mind you calling. I'm still awake in my bed. Say the things you shouldn't be saying. I don't want you to act like you still have that halo. Halo, got the halo. Like you still have that halo. Halo, you should let it go. Sing me to sleep, I need you watching. Don't wanna dream, but they do darkness. Sing me to sleep, I need you watching. Don't wanna dream.
Welcome back to the desk for the SPL, powered by our title sponsor and good friends over at Alienware. If you haven't already, you can take yourself over to smitegame.com/Alienware to check out all the cool discounts and deals that we have available for you from our friends over at Alienware, whether it's the Aurora Ryzen 10 desktop or the 25-inch monitor. You get your hands on all that sweet gear. And once again, smitegame.com/Alienware. Use code SMITEAW for yourself to pick up some of those nice promotionals. Follow them on their social media at Twitter and Instagram at Alienware, or on their webpage at alienwarearena.com for all their cool giveaways that they have available to you, and join the ever-growing global community for it. J-Mac Tucker and Taco one more time here to break down the set, break down Game 3. I want to say that it was a slow burn. I want to say that, except that Big Man Tings came out the gun running with Captain Twig and made a very quick name for themselves early on.
It was the punish from the Camelot Kings that kind of set the tone for game number 3, and I had a lot of concerns for what was going to happen to Genetics on that Khepri, but quite honestly, J-Mac, that was irrelevant. Captain Twig and Big Man Tings just completely shut down this Jade Dragons composition, and I think the most impactful part was just Big Man Tings finding that early triple kill in response. I liked what the Jade Dragons were doing in terms of trying to play out of the duo lane. I think putting a lot of pressure onto Netheroid was the right direction, but have to pay attention to what's happening elsewhere on the map at the same time. And Tings being able to collect a triple kill this early on into the game was just disastrous for the Dragons.
And Mifflin pointed out the variant of the cast, but I want to reiterate onto it. Right now, jungle seems to be one of the weaker roles, but you would not believe it with the performance that Captain Twig had in this third game, playing lights out. May have been one of the better sets of this phase coming from him, specifically one of the better games coming from him. This Gilgamesh, the fact that it was banned so many times early on, and then it made it through 2 games in a row, and Captain Twig comes out with this performance for the Gilgamesh, it's no surprise that we're seeing Gilgamesh and Raijin and even Osiris be some of the top picked and banned gods this phase.
Yeah, it's incredible to think that Pandacat, for some of the successes that were taking place, again, with some of those early punishes, they had a couple of picks going against Netheroid, but when you lose control of the mid-solo sides of the map, especially against a healer composition like what the Camelot Kings were running, it is just overwhelming because the chase down becomes too steep, and I just think that the Camelot Kings could not have executed this better, and I think more importantly, that punish that they made sure to actually force against the Jade Dragons that ultimately led them to the set victory here.
And with it, with their victory. We get to talk to him just a little bit. We got Variety on standby to talk to him about kind of how this set broke down for Variety. First off, congrats on your big win over the Dragons. Tell me a little bit about this Raijin. We talked a lot about on the desk how important is the Raijin. Is this like the mid pick to go to now?
I'd say so. I think the difference is with Raijin, like the other mids, like Morgan Le Fay, for example, is that he has an escape. And he also has good long range damage. His ult is like one of the best teamfight ults in the game as a mage. So yeah, I think he's definitely a top pick for pretty much every team.
So in game 1 and 2, you kind of let this Yemoja through, and then in game 3, you finally banned it away. What was kind of that trigger of maybe we should ban the Yemoja away from PVM?
Honestly, I honestly couldn't tell you because I think I was getting a drink when we decided on to ban Yemoja, but you know I trusted what they said, so I just went with it. But yeah, I actually have no idea.
Struggled a bit with the Hell game 1, game 3 you decided to bring it back out. What was kind of the decision making for that one?
It was more the fact that they didn't win the game, we just lost the game. And we did like a typical Kings where we just, especially in scrims, typical Kings scrims when the game's over at 5 minutes, and that's pretty much what happened. And we just, we didn't take it too personally, and we just like reset our mentals and just said that we should run it back because we know the comp is good, we know that we can win with it, and we just need to not make the same mistakes that we did game 1.
Well, a win, and it's a successful one for you. Congratulations on your win over the Dragons, and best of luck in your next set later in the week.
Thank you.
So, looking pretty confident over for the Kings. They get a huge win over the Dragons. They just trust their instincts. Game 1 is whatever for Game 3. They come back up strong, able to get a big win, take themselves in a victory over the Dragons. We get to kind of see how that affects the standings a little bit here for our first one. Now, with the Bolts, they got one less game than the Camelot Kings, but that head-to-head, I believe, does manage to favor the Kings for the time. So right now, they're kind of sitting back and waiting for that Olympus Bolts game that's going to be happening tomorrow.
Yeah, the Olympus Bolts games, I think, has a lot riding behind it. But probably Olympus Bolts still feeling pretty good about how their Split 2 performance has gone so far. I think it's also the Leviathans that are looking to try and round things out here. I think a little bit more pressure onto the Leviathans in terms of just trying to continue elevating themselves. As you can see, Olympus Bolts later on in the week up against the Valhalla Valkyries, and that's something that I know for a fact the Camelot Kings probably sweating a little bit.
Yeah, and the Camelot Kings have to deal with the Oni Warriors later on for their matchup as well. So there's a lot riding on that Olympus Bolts and Leviathans match that's happening tomorrow, but that's tomorrow. We still have today. Oni Warriors and Tartarus Titans will be your next set. You're surely not going to want to miss that one. We're going to take it to a quick break, and then we'll be back right here to kick off our second set.